We ready to go?
Yes.
Whenever you're ready, Matt. Good evening, West Orange, and welcome to the October 24th, 2017 council meeting. It's the 18th meeting of the year. Welcome, everybody. You can always watch the council meeting videos on public access, local public access. Also, you can go to www.westorange.org and look over on the left side of the homepage, and you can find a link to the meeting videos. On my script that the municipal clerk provides me before each meeting, it says, "Welcome by Council President," and what I wanted to do was have sort of a small welcome to our clerk, Karen Carnival. Those of you who have been watching from home notice that she hasn't been here for several weeks, and just want to welcome her back. It's good to have her back. And perhaps the reason you didn't notice was because the deputy clerk did such a fine job of sitting in for her. And just want to give a shout out to, I'm going to butcher this name, Fatima Baez Aguilar.
Aguilar, very good. Perfect. Thank you.
And without further ado, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. It's good to be back. This is to inform the general public that this meeting is being held in compliance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. The annual notice was emailed to the Star Ledger and filed in the Township Clerk's office on November 28, 2016, and published in the West Orange Chronicle on December 8, 2016. Councilwoman Castellino?
Present.
Councilman Cirillo?
Present.
Councilman Guarino?
Present.
Councilwoman McCartney?
Present.
Council President Krakowiak.
Present. So let's get right to our conference agenda, which is, I'm hoping, is going to be the most controversial issue of the evening. It's to determine 2018 council meeting dates. The municipal clerk has provided a draft of proposed council meetings, and want to throw this out to everybody to see what you think about the proposed dates. And just before we go, I think I do this every year, but I talk about that our ordinance requires us to meet twice a month, except in July and August when we meet once a month. And due to some trickiness on some of these months, we've only got one down here proposed. So I just like to have people thinking about what might be a second meeting to some of these later months.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, you all.
No.
Councilwoman.
So, well, how you doing?
Well, when we first received this, Council President, I did respond, and the only month that I see it looks like we're going to have difficulty is in September. But other than that, it seemed I didn't see any conflicts, and it just seemed like everything lined up nicely this year. Because I do recall last year, it took us so long to get through this calendar. So
Yes, it did. Took us a month of January.
right. So right
Just
now, I
kidding.
just see September because of the holidays.
Yep.
Yeah, the holidays are tough.
Councilwoman.
Right.
I would recommend in November, we have one meeting scheduled for the 13th. There's election day where we probably would have went the 6th and the 20th. I only see the 13th. Is there a reason we can't go on the 27th in November? Because then then that gives us 2 weeks before we go to the 11th in December, which is my son's birthday, but he'll be away in college still, so I'm good with that.
I don't see any reason.
Madam Clerk, any thoughts about why?
The only thought I would have is that we're not here Thursday and Friday. We would be back that Monday, so that would give less time for the department heads
Okay.
and the administration to gather meeting material. But that, that's up to you.
And on the 23rd, it's listed as President's Day.
Yeah, I don't know why that is.
I don't know why that would,
Yeah, it's interesting. I just
not on
saw
my
that.
calendar.
Yeah. Clearly, no, but.
Good old Black Friday.
Well, the real question is, do we have off, does the town have off on the 23rd?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Black Friday, yeah. Big shopping day.
Okay.
Not anymore.
So it's President's Day in that a lot of people are going to be shopping, and so there's
Yeah, I think that
like
was
former
a typo,
presidents on
to
the
be
dollar
honest.
bills.
I don't know why that's there.
But I do have one more question on October. Does the JS stand
Before
for
we get-
Jack Sayers? Is that your preference in October?
No, what I did was I had made some suggestions to the clerk before she passed this out, so, after she passed it out,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And the only suggestions that I made where you see JS next to them is because we have some scheduled meetings day after a holiday. And again, you know, it's probably better not to have it that day
Oh,
or
okay.
that week to the following week. So if you wanted to change those, that's up to you. If you don't, it's also up to you. I just, the ones marked JS were my suggestions.
Okay,
My
that's what I
suggested
thought.
Changes, I should say.
Yeah.
The only problem with that is you have such a long break, like you're only having one meeting. Well, I guess the 25th you could have in September.
talking
for
about?
Se-
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
September, I'm sorry. And the 25th of September with SACO is, it may end at sundown, so we may be able to.
Exactly, that's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah, we
Can I-
have been in touch with one of the rabbis in town, and they said it would be, you know, okay to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just suggest a little bit less free-for-all? Let's
I'm
just go
sorry.
through the months. No, that's okay, that's okay. Maybe we could just go through the months and confirm these proposals, and then when we get to the more challenging months, we'll address them. So on January, is there anybody have any questions or any objections to the 9th and the 23rd?
Good.
No, better
Okay.
than the second.
Okay. February, anybody have any questions or problems? Now, this is the 27th is down as a JS date.
Right, the reason I changed that is because President's Day is a holiday and then the council meeting's the next day. So if you move it to the following week, you don't have the holiday, but that's up to you guys. We've done it before, we can do it again,
Yeah.
it's totally up to you.
But, all right, so and then there's the recommendation for February, and that pushes everything back in March
Leads over
also.
into March, yes.
Which
Right,
is still
which is-
fine.
Yeah, really, it is fine.
So I'm fine for the 6th and the 27th, which is what Mr. Sayers has suggested alternately. Is everybody okay with that?
I am, but does that mean in March you're going to go to the 13th and the 27th?
Yeah, because it looks like he also suggested bumping them back a couple of,
Yeah, only because then you
Because-
would have a meeting 2 weeks in a row.
Right.
right.
So I pushed the other two back also.
And this isn't relevant necessarily, but just an FYI, we usually have, and if we're on time, schedule-wise with the budget, probably have the budget hearing would probably be that following weekend. So just tentatively, you might want to, either that weekend or probably, you know, the next weekend, assuming that we don't get a pushback from the state. So just a FYI.
So that still fits?
Yeah, it
with the rest-
doesn't preclude you from this. I just wanted
Okay.
you to keep in mind when you're looking at that kind of block out those weekends and determine what works. And it's all contingent upon what we get from the state, what the timeframe is.
So if everything moves
As
ahead,
normal.
what's, as normal, what would the Saturdays and Sundays that we should block out?
Probably that, we should try to do it the first weekend in March.
The 3rd,
Saturday. and
So you're talking about 3rd and 4th?
March 3rd.
All right, I'm still working on February.
No, we decided to do
That's
Okay.
not definite. I
27th.
just want you to keep that
Okay.
Sure.
in your orbit to pay attention to.
Okay. Is everybody fine with February 6th and 27th?
Sure.
Okay. And then for March, that, Mr. Sayers was also suggesting we bump back the two by 1 week, so instead of the 6th, have a meeting on the 13th, and instead of the 20th, have it on the 27th. Is everybody good with that? Oh, Councilwoman?
Could I just make a suggestion? Should we book the 3rd now so we all know ahead of time?
You can't, because
No,
we don't have the schedule.
We don't have the schedule.
Okay,
That's traditionally when it would be. That's the
Okay.
reason I
We have to
brought it
wait
up.
for the state.
okay.
So it would be March 13th and March 27th, right?
What does everybody think?
It's good. Good spacing.
Okay. Moving on to April. You've got the 10th and the 24th proposed.
Oh, guess I'll be okay. 24th's my anniversary, but I'll be okay. My husband will get over it.
You can invite him.
Nah,
Yeah,
nah.
somebody else had a council meeting on their anniversary this year.
Yeah, but
And a
he'll get
birthday.
over it.
It wasn't that easy.
Right, when you get up over 30 years, you're good.
I beg your
But
pardon.
seriously, if you don't think that works for you, we'll try to work around it.
Nah, it'll be fine.
Okay, so April 10th, April 24th are good. May, anybody have any questions or opposition to May 8th and May 22nd?
Nope.
June, anybody have any questions or problems with June 5th and June 19th?
No?
No.
July, anybody have any questions or opposition to the 17th?
No, I'll be all right.
Nope.
Okay. August, we have the 14th proposed. Any issues?
Nope.
I usually take vacation that week. I could drive up from the shore if I had to, so.
Well, if you want to move it to another, we've got the whole rest of the month open unless somebody else already has plans. It's up to you, Councilman.
Wednesday is wedding.
Huh?
Wednesday is wedding.
I did that, that was in July.
Okay. So,
I'll be okay.
Are you sure? Because if you move it to the 7th, that's 1, 2, 3 weeks there, then 1, 2, 3, and then we'll have the 4th. So
Are you
there's-
guys all okay on the week of the second week in August instead, on the 7th, or is anybody away that week?
Either one.
No?
Either one.
Doesn't
Either
matter?
7th is fine to me.
Yeah, if we could. He'll be
Our
away.
videographer is giving us
There
two
you go.
thumbs
All
up
right.
on the 7th.
There you go.
So the 14th gets moved to the 7th.
Majority.
Correct.
so now we're going to the
The
7th?
7th?
Yes.
So, are you sure?
Yeah, and that gives you
Yeah,
3
majority
weeks and then
rules.
3 weeks,
Okay.
so it's fine. It's actually better. Okay. This is
think
the
I would-
month you always have the issue with.
Yeah. I think I would prefer moving the 4th to the 11th.
You
So
can't,
that's
it's Rosh
one.
Hashanah.
Yeah.
That's what the problem is.
Oh,
It's-
that's
there's-
right.
Yeah.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
So now we're into September.
Yeah, which is always a issue.
Oh, well, so
Yeah.
we said at sunset, that still works for the 25th.
that
Oh,
one
so then the
works.
4th and the 25th?
So we're on the 4th, right? We're going to
Yes.
stay with the 4th, and we're off the 11th and the 25th?
Correct.
Or is it a holidays?
Right.
So it would be the 4th and the 25th.
Oh, the 25th is a holiday too.
Yeah, because
But that one-
Sukkoth's over at
Okay.
sundown, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, so the
Sukkot's
4th
on.
and the 25th.
Right.
Great.
Okay,
That works.
Mm-hmm.
in October,
Oh, between the holiday and Mr. Sayers,
Yes.
we've got every Tuesday taken care of.
Well, again, Columbus Day is a holiday, so I figured rather than do Columbus Day, you would do the 16th, and if you were going to do the 16th, you couldn't do the 23rd, so you'd have to move it to the 30th. This
Still
way you're not
works.
doing you're not having a meeting right after the holiday.
Right.
If you want to, it's up
And
to you
then 2
guys.
weeks later, you do the one in November.
So what does everyone think about October 16th and the 30th?
Still works for me.
yeah, I guess I'm okay, yeah.
I know.
So the 9th and the 23rd are out, and we're on the 16th and the 30th.
Correct.
16th and the
Yes.
30th.
Okay?
16th and the 30th.
And then you have November.
Got November, anybody have any issues with the 13th? And I was going to suggest the 27th.
Yeah, no, I'm good there.
Still okay.
And the 27th?
Huh? Yeah, I'm good the 27th.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so 13th and 27th?
Fine.
November? Okay.
I mean, I'm hoping with 2 meetings, then they're shorter. Than-
Oh, amen.
Because, yeah, when we had got stuck with the once a month.
Yes, the
Huh?
agendas can get very full. So for November, we've picked the 13th and the 27th,
Okay.
and we're to December.
Yeah, but that's here. I'm not working on that.
Another full month.
Yeah, I'm good with one in December.
So we've got Hanukkah, that's 8 days. So we could meet on the 11th,
Yeah.
but then 2 weeks from that, the Tuesday's is Christmas.
Yeah.
I think it's fine.
You know, yeah, probably be quiet because it is the end of the month
Usually
with a
is.
holiday.
All right.
I think we're fine for December.
I'm sorry?
I think we're fine for 1 month, and one meeting in December.
You almost don't have a choice, really.
Well, the alternative might be to move it to a different day of the week, like the 27th.
The
That would be a
problem you have
Thursday.
with that is you have other boards that use this. I'd have
Ah.
to check that out.
Okay.
2 days after Christmas.
So could we, Madam Clerk,
Yes.
if you guys are okay with this, do you want to check on the 27th and the 31st and see if either one of those are available? Have the conference room available, or is 31st?
It's a holiday.
I don't, yeah. I don't-
31st is New Year's Eve.
First is
Yeah.
New Year's.
Yeah.
It will
Are you
ensure,
lis- are
it
you
will ensure a
listening to
very
this,
short
Mrs.
meeting.
Krakowiak in the audience?
If you have it new,
If you have it at noon.
Maybe have it at noon, right?
See how
So-
dedicated we are, anniversaries, New Year's Eve, we're working.
So let's, if you guys are okay with this, maybe we check on the 27th? And if it's
Of what?
available, maybe we do
Of
that?
December.
2 days after Christmas.
Oh, absolutely not.
No?
I still
I'm in a
have-
still of a
Yeah.
coma. I cook for 3 days, and there's no
Yeah, I
way.
still have a house.
Usually off Christmas week anyway, I think. But that, you don't need me.
Yeah, I do too. actually.
Yeah, I'm with my,
Most people are off that week of Christmas.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a slow month.
yeah.
not us finance guys.
We're so
Okay.
dedicated.
I make a motion, we have one meeting in December.
I mean, at least we picked up the extra one in November,
Mm-hmm.
and it is quieter in December.
I think it works. I think it works good.
If you want to go January 2nd, 16th, well, no, you don't need 3 meetings in January.
Yeah, it's pretty closed out
Yeah,
if we don't want to
No.
do the week between Christmas and New Year's. Okay.
Huh?
Right.
So we're fine with a council meeting in December, just one council meeting in December on the 11th? Do we need to vote on that, or
No, I
No?
don't believe so.
What?
Vote on it, no.
on the schedule?
Put it on the calendar?
You're not voting on it.
huh? 17th, was it? Is that Tuesday the 17th?
July 17th.
Yeah.
17th. Everybody good?
August was the 7th.
Right.
Okay, next on the agenda, an update on downtown redevelopment from Mr. Sayers.
Again, you've been going by there, everything is going well. Actually, I was by there today. They have the brick sidewalks, most of them are put in. They're still finishing that up. They're working on the back end as well as the side on Standish Avenue. The walls are going up inside the building, and last I heard was that they're talking possibly mid-spring for the ROR to start
Very good.
renting out space in there.
Yeah, I was at one of the mayor's community meetings, and he mentioned that he didn't say the time had been pushed back. I know you had been saying for a while that maybe they were hoping that they could get something rendered or leased before the end of this year. But
Yeah,
I think it's
that's off the table.
okay.
From what I understand now, they're talking probably beginning of spring, mid-spring, to be able to start renting out the ROR. Yes.
I saw the walls are up in the apartments. Do they run any plumbing or electric yet, or?
Yes, I believe they have, the sewer systems are in. I'm not sure if the electric is in, but I think the plumbing was in too. Not all of it, but part of it. As you see where the walls are, there's some, if you look up, some of the floors don't have any walls in them yet, so
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah.
And just one last question, and I forgot to ask Mr. Lepore myself, but do you know, across the street, is he doing the sidewalks? Not the developer, but did we put in a schedule to, across the street from the project, we'll be getting new sidewalks there, or any street improvements?
That I'm not sure of. I'd have to talk to Lenny about that.
Okay. I
would
keep
be-
forgetting to ask him if he has anything scheduled.
I'll ask him.
Okay. All right,
It's a county
just
thing.
wondering.
It's a county road,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Any other questions?
No?
Any update, Mr. Sayers, on the financial part of this, where we've agreed to provide $6.2 million in financing for them, but it was subject to doing a lot of cost accounting to make sure that it qualified for financing?
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be after the first of the year now.
Yeah, probably. We've got our people have looked at everything, they've sent it back to us, we're reviewing it, and we're probably looking at the first of the year. Sometime after the first of the year. Look that up.
Hey,
Is
Councilman?
that both portions, the allocation and the loan?
No, it's the 6 million where they're splitting 3, and we're splitting 3 for the
Right, right.
infrastructure.
So it hasn't been touched? You
No,
say-
right now.
No, we haven't borrowed the money yet.
Not yet.
Like I said, we won't borrow the money now until after the first of the year.
Okay.
It's authorized, but it's been, excuse me, we've already voted to approve it, but we're not going to do it until,
No, because we wanted to review the work that they did and make sure it was what we had agreed to.
we good? Final on the agenda for the conference agenda is council liaison announcements. Who'd like to go?
Sure.
Councilwoman?
Of course, thanks. I wanted to say thank you first to everyone who was able to attend the Muckers Ball. That was to conserve the electric charging station at the Glenmont Garage. It was a really beautiful night under the tent at the Thomas Edison National Historic Park. And I wanted to really thank the Pour House for providing our signature cocktail, the Electric Spark, the Manor for their delicious desserts, the Wilshire Grand for an amazing amount of food, Libretti's also for always successful with their food, Supreme Bakery for a beautiful sheet cake with images on the cake of Thomas Edison and his muckers, and Dunkin' Donuts and Benji's for the they provided a photo booth. So it was really just a very fun event. So thank you to all that were able to attend. The Chamber of Commerce has their annual big event, the Thanksgiving Luncheon, since we're talking about calendars. Mark your calendar for Wednesday, November 22nd at 12 o'clock, Mayfair Farms. This is in conjunction with the West Orange Chamber, the Lions Club, the Rotary, and Unico. Thanksgiving Luncheon tickets are available at westorangechamber.com. And they also have, the Chamber also has Biz 2.0, which is an educational forum that is held at the library on Thursday evenings between 5 and 7. November 2nd is their next Biz 2.0 session. Planning Board will meet next Wednesday here in Council Chambers, and the topic of discussion is the Essex Green study as an area in need of redevelopment. And the Environmental Commission, I'm glad to see the Wildan resolution on our agenda this evening for New Jersey Clean Energy. We stand to save money as part of that program. And the Environmental Commission had a presentation, an interesting presentation at last month's meeting from a company called Field Goods, F-I-E-L-D, Field Goods. And instead of you going to the farmer's market comes to us. So we have a few locations. This will all be posted on our town webpage. There are different size bags. You get a newsletter, subscription for these fresh vegetables from 60 sustainable farms in New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. gets delivered once a week to these locations. So First Mountain Preschool happens to be the first location. I'm hoping that the library thinks that this is a nice community minding event, so the library would be another. We'll find out if they can approve that. And through the chamber, we're seeking other locations around town to make it convenient for everyone to order and pick up. Deliveries would be every Thursday between 2 and 5 o'clock. So we're going to launch that in the next couple of days. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councilman?
Thank you, Council President. Just like to know, we had a great pedestrian safety meeting 2 weeks ago. We are putting together our plans for our big marketing rollout that will occur in early spring of 2018. We hope you'll all come out to our next meeting, which the meeting date will be verified and on the township website by next week. We had to change the meeting date, so a new meeting date for November. We hope residents will come out and give us their input, but our big spring marketing kickoff will happen early spring with a lot of giveaways, with a lot of marketing tools and pedestrian safety and an idea of our Complete Streets rollout, particularly our Complete Streets rollout for Main Street. So we hope the residents will come and give us their opinions and observations. Second of all, coming up in November will be the open houses, and with the Downtown Alliance, the Shop Small through American Express. Keep on a lookout on the township website for that, for the dates, for the giveaways, and for the special discounts that merchants will be giving during Shop Small West Orange, sponsored by American Express. And thank you, Council President. That's all I have tonight.
Certainly. Who's next?
I'll go next.
Councilman?
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to let the council know that we're working on some changes to the tree ordinance, and we'll reach out to Ken Kaiser soon with those changes. We're working with some of our residents to make some changes in light of some of the activities that have been going on around town and some of the proposed development. Council President, also we've been working with the I've been working with the Degnan House to try to address some inspection deficiencies at the Degnan House. There's an issue with the federal assessment on the structural component of that property, and I've been talking to the chairman and the director on how to how to proceed and make sure that those shortcomings are addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you think maybe by next council meeting you could come back and just give us an update? And
Yes,
follow up?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Great.
just requested a copy of the inspection results, just to see what we can do to put together a recovery plan so that the property scores better
Okay.
in the next round.
That'd be good.
That's good.
Councilwoman?
Thank you. Just to piggyback on Councilman Guarino's plug for the American Express small business, I think that's townwide also, and also when you check the website, American Express, usually when you use your American Express cards, you get double points, so just a note to self for that. This Thursday, West Orange Friends of the Public Library is having a fundraiser at the Oak Barrel Pub for 40 Main Street. From all day long, starts at 12 o'clock for lunch, going to dinner. 15% of the day's proceeds will be donated to the West Orange Public Library. So you have opportunity to come out and get a bite to eat. Please visit the Oak Barrel, and you'll be assisting us to assist the public library. Senior citizen surveys are due back October 31st. If you haven't taken our senior citizen survey yet online, please do so by going to our website, www.westorange.org. Click onto Senior Citizen Services right on the front page, and it will take you straight to the survey. If you've already taken out a PDF copy from either the library or the health department, if you could please get it back to us and return it. If you need assistance in picking it up, you could reach us at 973-325-4105 and ask for Patty Duffy, and she'll be more than happy to make arrangements. I just want to let the council know, the administration, I can't say enough for the efforts at the health department. They've gone above and beyond with this project. Patty Duffy, Susan Iovino, they've been so aggressively out there in the community, visiting all the senior buildings, making sure everything comes back in. On October 16th, we had a great turnout for the Mountaineer Mentors at the high school. And I have to thank Mallory DeMarco, one of our special education teachers up at the high school. She instructed chair yoga. And we had also Dave Joycel, one of our phys ed teachers there, pitching in to assist with the technology portion for the day. The students were wonderful. If someone wasn't helping assist one of our seniors with the technology end of it, they were inputting surveys for the health department right into the computer for us, which was great, which will save some time for Ms. Duffy. So anyway, we thank them. It was great intergeneration activity. It was enjoyed by all, and we look forward to some more activities. Hopefully, once the survey comes back in, we get the study in, it will be presented to the public in probably by February 1st, we're targeting. Currently, about 678 residents have taken the survey. That's the feedback we have received from Montclair State University, who's helping us facilitate it. So we look forward to the results, but again, there's so many surveys still out there. We're hoping to creep up to that 1,000 participation mark, and so I know they're out there, so if you could get them back to us, we'll be able to input them and hopefully make our goal. That is all, Council President.
Sounds good. That looks like end of our conference agenda. I'm sorry. My memory span is less than 2
That's
minutes,
okay.
so I couldn't
No, it's
remember
better than
that.
mine. It's better than mine. Thank you, Council President. Had to add it. Another thing is 2 topics having to do with rent-a-house. Rent-a-house, the new windows are fully installed and they're being inspected. The residents are totally ecstatic about the renovation on their windows, of the energy savings that we'll be achieving through the new windows. Also, the tenant meeting is being planned so the tenants can come and propose to the current management company of their concerns about rent-a-house. And what we're doing is we're rolling out a proposed CapEx project for rent-a-house, whatever is left after the window project is completed. Whatever additional revenues that we do have will be rolled out to carpet repair, color, and we will be getting the tenants' input and the residents' input into the type of colors that we will be painting the interior of rent-a-house. Secondly of all is, I didn't see Mrs. Borelli here, but also what we are planning through rent-a-house, which will be accessible to all the residents, the seniors throughout West Orange, is what we call brown bag program. And what a brown bag program is, the seniors can bring their medications to rent-a-house. The medications will be inspected and deemed whether they're still potent or not, and they need to be discarded. And we will discard the medications in a safe, controlled environment. So please be on the lookout when that date is set, but it will be held at Rent-A-House, and it will be open to all senior residents of the Township of West Orange. And thank you, Council President. I didn't want to forget those.
Yes, like me. Madam Clerk.
This is to inform the general public that this meeting is being held in compliance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. The annual notice was emailed to the Star Ledger and filed in the Township Clerk's office on November 28, 2016, and published in the West Orange Chronicle on December 8, 2016. Councilwoman Castellino?
Present.
Councilman Cirillo?
Present.
Councilman Guarino?
Present.
Councilwoman McCartney?
Present.
Council President Krokoviac?
Present.
Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The council is now in their public meeting.
First on the agenda is public comment, and I see some familiar faces here, and I just wanted to add some information that might impact whether you want to speak or how you want to speak. These familiar faces are from our last council meeting, October 3rd, when there was extensive discussion, extensive public comment on some proposed changes on Luddington Road. Subsequent to that meeting, the administration has decided to resurvey residents on the street and in the area, and is considering other alternatives rather than making it simply a one-way street heading west that still serves safety, to increase safety on the street, and also to try to get some consensus from everybody on the street about what's the best way to move forward. So there's, Mr. Sayers, I can see you raising your hand.
A second?
Oh, please.
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure what we're doing is correct. We're not looking to change anything. The administration is not looking to change anything. What the issue was there were some people who called the mayor and spoke to him about different things, and there were 2 different surveys that were done, and people voted one way on one survey, one way on the other. The only thing we're going to do is we're going to walk the neighborhood and talk to the neighbors, but we're not looking to change what's already been approved. I just want to make that clear as of this point.
Right, and I had asked, I guess if Mr. Lepore could come to the meeting tonight, I can see him in the back, he's the town engineer.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be scheduled to speak at this point, but he will be speaking later on, and as you can tell, Mr. Sayers also knows a great deal about the situation. I just asked if maybe the council could be brief on where things stand. So I just wanted to put that out before public comment. At the October 3rd meeting, I think we were all impressed by the passion that was displayed and also the civility, so I hope that will continue. So for public comment, is those of you who don't know, please raise your hand, be recognized, come up to the lectern, start out by identifying yourself by name and address, and please spell your first and last name, and you'll have 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes to speak, and once everybody finishes speaking, then the council and perhaps the administration will respond to specific questions. So what we try to do to speed things up is, if you're recognized by the chair, please move down to the first or second row so that we can have less downtime in between speakers. So I can see Mr. Kuby there. Please come on down. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Please, Ms. Malanga, please come down. And whoever's behind, yes, please come on down. Mr. Sweeney, Mr. Ryan. Come on down. Okay. Ms. Williams, I'm sorry.
Dave Kuby, West Orange Public Library Director. Hello, everybody. So I'm just going to keep this very limited. Also, I want to just repeat what Councilwoman Castellino said, to come out and support the Friends of the West Orange Public Library this Thursday for lunch and dinner at the Oak Barrel on 440 Main Street, and 15% will be donated to the Friends, and the Friends will support the library, and that is fantastic. This November 7th, of course, is an election, and there is an issue. So this is an educational service announcement, that there is issue number 1 is the Library Construction Bond Act, and that will provide $125 million in grant funds for needed repairs and updates to public library buildings. And funded projects will create construction jobs, small business opportunities, and stimulate New Jersey's economy. And that is, more information on that can be found at www.njlibrariesbuildcommunities.org. And it is also supported, this is why it's also supported by the Alliance, New Jersey Alliance for Action, which has 2,500 of New Jersey's top corporate, labor, professional, academic, and governmental representatives are members of the New Jersey Alliance for Action. And the reason why they're supporting that is because not only this is a one-to-one match, so it's $125 million in grant funds, but it will put $250 million into capital projects across the state. One more big exciting event is that the West Orange Public Library Teen Advisory Group, and I know that Ms. Williams will be speaking on this as well in more detail, the Teen Advisory Group, the Unity Club from the high school, has been working with the Human Relations Commission for a teen talk here at the town hall tomorrow night at 7 to 8:30. But I am going to let Ms. Williams, when she comes up, speak on greater detail on that. But a lot of great and exciting things for the library community, And please support us in all the many different ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuby. Ms. Malanga, I think you're next.
Sally Malanga, 57 Ridge Road. I went to the Muckers Ball, and I thought it was a fabulous event. And I want to thank Susan McCartney for inviting me and everyone else, and I definitely recommend everyone go next year. That site is a historic treasure and in our town, and that leads me to say that I believe it is to our benefit for us to update our West Orange master plan. If we sit down with goals and we set these goals down on paper, we'll have a direction for the town. There are many people in town advocating for open space, complete streets, historic preservation, more commerce, better commerce, connectivity. And so it's a worthy discipline to re-examine the plan. And also, I'd like to be able to incorporate the latest in planning innovations to make our town a little bit slower, retain and promote its historic nature, and keep our property values high. So I would like to see us embark on the re-examination of the master plan, and I would be happy to participate in that as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Malanga. Mr. Sweeney, you look like you're next on the bench. And then after that, Ms. Williams. Sound good? Thank you.
Very quickly. First out, Mr. Kuby spoke about the New Jersey bond, New Jersey Library.
Mr. Sweeney,
Bond
I apologize for interrupting you.
Excuse me?
I apologize for interrupting you, but we require all speakers to identify themselves first.
Okay, yes.
Spelling first and last name, and
Sorry
also
about
giving
that.
their address.
My
Please.
name is Gerald Sweeney. I live at 24 Oak Bend in West Orange. I've lived in West Orange many years, more than 30. I periodically speak here. Sometimes I forget to give my name here. But anyway, I do want to speak. As you know, I speak frequently about the library. I'm the president of the Friends of the West Orange Public Library. We were formed last year. So we come out, we support a lot of things, and we advocate, obviously, for the library, and there's two things that I wanted to focus on. The Township Council approved bonds for construction and improvement and upgrading, renovation, repairs of the West Orange Public Library. It needs it. It will need further work. There's something everyone should know about. The New Jersey Library Construction Bond Act was approved earlier this year. It provides for funding in the form of grants of up to $125 million to help libraries make those renovations, repairs, constructions, and other things that are necessary. The legislator has recognized the value of the library. This Township Council and the mayor have also recognized it. They've recognized in the last 2 years, and we thank you for all that. This act doesn't take effect. The Library Bond Construction Act does not take effect in the sense that no money will be available unless the voters come up there and say, we're going to support this, and they vote in favor of it. It's a referendum. It's a public question. I certainly support that voting in favor of that because it will provide a bigger bang for our buck. We already have some bonds here approved, but what this allows, a one-for-one match, and effectively we can double our bond bucks here to make the improvements that are necessary. The library needs a lot of work, and again, the council has recognized that. So November 7th, please vote, and please vote in favor. It helps this community, it helps all libraries. I do want to read one little thing, just little excerpts. The legislator, this is from the actual bill itself. The legislature finds and declares that New Jersey's public libraries serve an invaluable role for its citizenry. Skipping over, the benefits of public libraries are numerous. and the construction, expansion, and improvement of public libraries should be actively promoted to ensure the well-being and success of New Jersey citizens. So we have the Township Council recognizing the value of the library and putting in bucks, and the state this year has recognized it, so we encourage you to go out and support it. I do want to mention another thing is that Mr. Kuby had mentioned a fundraiser we have at the Oak Barrel Pub on Thursday the 26th. This is out of the generosity of the owners of the Oak Barrel. They made available for the whole day and agreed to contribute a certain percentage of their revenues, exclusive of taxes and tips and things like that, as a donation to the Friends. The Friends use the money to help the library. We use some of the money to finance the project and some to help with projects related to the library, including we did have a book sale in the fall, the end of almost the end of September, and we're planning on having a second book sale and having 2 book sales a year. So we haven't scheduled for the spring. We got a good turnout. We did a lot of investment, and the people came out, said a lot of wonderful things about the library. And those who don't know what the library, if you go over there and you see what's going on at the library, it's a tremendous resource that for most people it's hidden and unknown. You can get just about anything there. It's like, I don't know, not Martha's Restaurant. What was the name of that restaurant? Okay, I forget the name of the restaurant and the song. You can get anything at the restaurant. So, but it's a wonderful place.
Your time is up.
Mr.
And
Sweeney,
my time
please
is up, so,
finish your
but
thought.
your time is not up. You can vote on the 7th, and you can come on the 26th. And thank you for your time, and thank you for your time, and good evening, all of you.
Mr. Ryan, maybe you can come down to the front row. And Ms. Williams, please, while Ms. Williams is coming up. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak tonight? Please raise your hand, be recognized. Mr. Meyerowitz, please. I can see red shirt. Please come on down to the first floor. First row. It's been a long day, I'm sorry. And Ms. Ryan, perhaps after that.
Good evening. My name is Tammy Williams. I live at 16 Hillside Avenue, and I am here representing the Human Relations Commission. I wanted to bring to the forefront some wonderful partnerships that we'll be doing right here in this room tomorrow, which is a teen talk. So we've had some incidents at the high school, diversity-related incidents, and we want to give our teens at the high school an opportunity to discuss what occurred, to problem solve, and perhaps eliminate any future challenges that they might have. So we'll be doing that. We'll have a panel of teens, primarily teens from the high school, but we will also have 1 college student and 1 post-college graduate. It is going to be specifically for the teens. The first half will be of the panel discussion will be videotaped and will be available on online social media. The second half of the Teen Talks will be a closed session just for the teens so that they can speak freely and not have to worry about criticisms from parents and other adults. Also like to share that on January 15th, 2018, we will have our annual MLK Day celebration. It will again be at TLCC, the Life Christian Church, which is located at 747 Northfield Avenue. We're in the process of securing our keynote speaker, but the theme for next year's MLK Day celebration is A Hand in Freedom. And that's it for the HRC for me today.
Thank you. Ms. Williams, before you go, what time tomorrow night, if there's anybody?
7 p.m.
Thank
to
you.
8:30 p.m. tomorrow.
7 p.m. tomorrow to 8:30. Okay, thank you. Mr. Ryan, I think you're next.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jason Ryan, Jasonryan, 536 Melrose Place in Ludington. Following up on our meeting from the 3rd to talk a little bit more about some of the people we've talked to since that meeting and some of the feedback we've received. And I guess feel better as a community about this whole thing. So we originally came in, there was a 10-3 vote, and I'll just, you know my major points, because I think I sent out to everybody probably too much dialogue in follow-ups, which I generally do because I'm a detail person. But as of today, residents on Ludington that reside there, 14 of the 21 houses are opposed to this. And it's, again, not us coercing anyone to be opposed to it. We've, last night until, gosh, almost 11 o'clock at night, we were sitting in Dr. Haley's living room, who's here, love you. But I think that's something that wasn't recognized at the last meeting. And at the last meeting we came in, and I believe there was 11 votes versus the 10-3 that we had heard from the previous year that was polled. And unfortunately, Mr. LaCour, that I finally got to meet, nice to meet you, sir, we had numbers that were different than that we didn't felt were heard correctly. And it's not us. So it's not my wife and I that this is about, and it's more about the neighborhood or the people that reside on the street that had that opinion that nobody may have considered. I'm not saying you didn't, but maybe you didn't, and maybe whatever happened, they didn't have the opportunity to speak. So as of today, we had 14 of 21 households sign the petition saying that they really don't want this to happen. We should explore other alternatives. We shouldn't make that change that would be very difficult to overturn. And you know better than I do that process, but I'm guessing I'm smart enough to know that that's not easy at that point. So I speak on behalf of them, and I've sat with all of them. And some are here tonight, and there's more coming, and we just want it to be fair. And we care about the kids, and we care about the family petitioning. We don't know it's not a us versus them people thing. It's kind of where's the level playing ground and where's the fair fight in terms of people's voices being heard and people being spoken to and people understanding a process that's taken place that we didn't even understand. Maybe we're just not that bright, but we didn't understand until the end. So we hit all of our points previously. Our bigger concerns, we're certainly concerned about children on the street. We're equally concerned with the diversion of traffic. If it becomes one way, going onto the other streets that have exponentially more children. And Gregory School and kind of all of those areas, and there's South Orange, we've heard from a lot of people over there that are worried about the traffic now that's going to go there. We just want it to be fair, and we want it to be considered. And we know it's not a perfect street. We bought our house there, and we understand that. But I think it deserves 14 out of 21 people not agreeing with it to be explored further. That's all. And we've become the de facto people to talk about this. And I've taken a bunch of time off of work to do this. And again, my emails are way too long probably. But that's kind of where we are. And I really like all of the people we met, everybody in the neighborhood. And Allison and her family, I mean, we kind of know each other. I don't think it's not a personal thing for us at all. It's just kind of a fairness of people being heard. And when I heard 10-3, I was like 21 houses, we have 14 out of 21, the real number, that aren't with that change. So how does that work? So that's kind of where we stepped in, and we met with a lot of people. I sat with Roseanne today, who's been there 61 years, who doesn't want it to change, who hadn't been spoken to, and we just want it to be fair, we want it to be heard, we want, if there's alternatives, those should be explored first in our opinion and everybody else's before you make that change. Because once you make a change, and again, I could be wrong, to a one-way, to reverse that change, as we've heard, certainly in the October 3rd meeting, we can always change that later, I think that's very difficult. So I'd rather think if there's really a 14 out of 21 that people weren't aware of before, that I presented the information to Joe today, and thank you, Joe, for providing that to everybody else, it deserves further exploration and further consideration of all of those people that are not for this going forward. So I'll leave it there. Thank you again for letting us.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Just a reminder to everyone who's coming up, there are 2 microphones at the lectern, and you can adjust them. They're pretty easy to adjust. We've got the air conditioning on because it's so hot, If you could speak into the microphone, keep your mouth a couple of inches away from the microphones, both of them, it'd be great and make it much easier for people to hear. Please come on up. Mr. Meyerowitz, you'll be next.
Does it matter which one I speak in?
Actually, can you speak into both of them? There you go. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Betsy Stevens, and I live at 21 Helen Avenue in West Orange. And I guess I want to just say change is hard, and I think that change often, you guys have the hardest job because it has to come from a governing body, and the job of the governing body is to look out for the safety of its citizens, and I feel like you guys did that job the last time around. I just found out today that this was coming back to vote, and I was unaware of it. I have to admit that I've driven down Ludington numerous times. I live on Helen, and it is very convenient to go that direction. But I personally would prefer to have our streets be safe than for it to be convenient for me to get to CVS or get down the hill. So I think that the decision that was made before was a good decision. It was a decision made for the safety of our children and of the other people living on Ludington and the people getting off and on jitneys and buses and whatnot there. And I don't see a reason for second guessing that. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Just to clarify for everybody, there's nothing on the agenda tonight that we are considering or voting on, as I think Mr. Sayers made clear. Mr. Lepore, I think, is going to come up a little bit later in the meeting and just describe sort of where we stand. But there's nothing on the agenda tonight. There's no vote taken. Appreciate if you want to come up and speak, that's fine. Mr. Meyerowitz.
Hi, Mark Meyerowitz, 19 Howell Drive. I caught the end of your scheduling comments before, and you mentioned something about Hanukkah. So I don't know if you're blocking out the entire week of 8 days of Hanukkah and not having any meetings. You don't have to do that, because Hanukkah is not. You probably know this already, but Hanukkah is not a holiday that where you have to change your activities whatsoever. You know, we light a menorah, say some blessings, people sing some songs, gives kids presents, but your activities can go on as normal. So if you want to schedule meetings for those nights, nobody could be insulted by your doing that. So those days could be freed up. I support what Mrs. Malenga said about the public planner. I think it's a very good idea to have an outside view looking, going over things, and maybe they see things that the council and township don't see. Maybe they confirm what you're doing is the right thing, or maybe they have other ideas that could help. I know I'm never one who wants to spend more money, but it seems like the amount of money that this would cost is not so crazy expensive that the potential benefit could outweigh the cost. So I would strongly suggest that you do go ahead with the public planner and get some ideas. I'm also concerned, I read last week about that the Rent-A-House failed the federal inspection, and I suppose it wasn't right?
Degnan House.
Oh, Degnan House. Okay. So then my confusion is changed. All right. So I have nothing about that. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Meyerowitz. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Please raise your hand. Be recognized. There's somebody standing up. Now you're raising your hand. Come on up, please. If there's anyone else, I saw some other hands. Could you please be next? And I thought I saw another hand over here on my right. Yes, please. You can be number 3, please. Thank you.
My name is Manasseh Haile, M-I-N-A-S-S-E, first name. Last name Haile, H-A-I-L-E. I reside with my family in number 3, Ludington Road. I spoke last week very briefly. Similarly today I want to be brief about what are the substantive issues. This evening I said, what is the complaint about Ludington Road. I reread a letter by the complaint by petitioner. Only a few items were mentioned. One is there is a youngster that attends Gregory School was in danger as he walks back and forth from school. The other is complaint about the speed of people driving on the highway. Apparently it means the speed going down, but there's also speed going up. Also they speak about the volume of traffic. All this situation, of course, existed for a long time. We have been living in 3 Ludington Road since for 16, 17 years now. The solution that is proposed for this minor problem is very drastic. They say they want to change Ludington Road from being 2-way, 1-way. It affects the rights of many of the people who sort of acquired a right in living there for many years. Newcomers knew the situation. When they bought that house, they complained against their situation. Well, maybe it's error in judgment. Maybe they shouldn't live there. And it's so what are the issues there? Are the petitioners affected more by the status quo than the adverse effect on the respondents by making Ludington Road 1-way? If it's phrased in this way, of course, there is no overwhelming reason for making it 1-way. Here we must realize, distinguished members of the council, the burden of proof is on the petitioners. They have to overcome the situation that this matter was settled years ago. I don't know when, but at least for the last 20 years, almost 20 years we live there, nothing has been questioned. Respondents have a fundamental, difficult burden of proof of dispelling the assumption of the acquired, so to speak, acquired rights and the assumption of status quo on Ludington Road. If the newcomers are not happy with it, the solution is to change, not to make fundamental alteration in the life of the people that have lived there for many, many years. And evidence has been adduced here the other day that is really shocking. Instead of considering the effects on the people that actually live on Ludington Road, evidence was brought in from distant areas insofar as the Ludington Road is concerned, so that what is affection, that could be a very, very tricky problem. I have a son, one of my sons is in Texas. He can't say also. He will oppose because my father is now required to drive all that way. It might be risky for him. I am affected. Put my name in. I'll call him here to speak to on that basis. There is no end to it. A Californian can claim. In law, we have a solution to that. Those called factual possession. We're talking about what we call in law proximate possession, which cuts off certain consequences, chain of events, so that there is no real compelling reason that I see to upset the whole situation that prevails, to accommodate a few interests and distant neighbors who claim they have been affected. Many people could be affected, but there is no, in legal terms, proximate possession to take that into account. Please decide this on the merits of it, on the issue that's actually presented. The rights of the respondents vis-a-vis the rights of the
Your time is up.
Pardon?
Mr. Heine, your time is up.
I hope we'll get favorable consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak, public comment? You be next, and you be next, please, after the woman with the hat, okay? Thank you.
Allison Ulrich, 1 Franklin Terrace.
Can you spell your last name?
Ullrich.
I'm sorry, and your address, I'm sorry.
1 Franklin Terrace.
Thank you.
I almost don't know where to start again. So I guess the one thing I just wanted to mention that I think the council people are all aware of is notifications were sent to each home on Ludington by the town. Prior to those notifications going out last spring, I hand-delivered, I think I mentioned this last time, I hand-delivered a note that I had written, which I shared with you, about my husband and I and our support for the town's proposal to change Ludington into a one-way road. And I want to be very clear about that. This was not my proposal. I am not a civil engineer. I make no pretenses to know how roads work or what it means to affect traffic flow. I don't know if any of my neighbors on Ludington are civil engineers. But based on the information that was taken over 3 separate occasions independently by the town, they found, in contrast to what the previous gentleman mentioned, issues that were not insignificant. They actually, and I mentioned this in my letter to people, speeding is not the concern. The concern is that there are 1,000 around. It was 550 in one direction on average and 4 something on average in the other direction. Roughly 1,000 cars traveling on a road that has 22 homes. And that's very unusual. But again, I don't know the solution to that problem. And I had said to my neighbor, maybe they could do sidewalks. Maybe they could, I don't know, sidewalks really were the thing that came to mind. And the town came back and said in their proposal that it was a one-way road was the fix that they were going to advocate for. And so therefore I supported it because it was solving a problem that I appreciate directly impacts my family differently than other families because I happen to have a young family. I have a 20-month-old, I have a 6-year-old, and I have an 8-year-old. We travel to and from school every day together. This is something that is very close to me. And again, I'm not pretending that I knew the best solution. I was supporting the solution that the town advocated for. When the town sent that petition, the thing that I would also like to clarify, they sent it to everybody's home, and it was with a self-addressed stamped envelope that folks could take it upon themselves to check something off and send it back. 10 people chose to send it back and say, yes, they think this is a good idea, and 3 people chose to send it back and say, no, they don't think this is a good idea. So I question, and I would, again, respectfully, I question a movement that happens after an entire process has been completed when there was notification at a minimum of 3 other points prior to that different opinions could have been shared. I did attempt to speak to my neighbor, Mr. Ryan, and he refused to speak to me. I assume it was because there was a difference of opinion that would exist there. But again, as I said, I was supporting this proposal because I believed it solved a problem that was identified. Not because I'm a one-way road aficionado, or that it's something that I believe passionately about. I believe passionately that a town should protect its citizens, and that, in my opinion, the vote that was taken 2 weeks ago took all of that into account. and unanimously decided to make a change advocated and supported by the town. And I'm sick of talking about one-way roads. I'm sick of thinking about one-way roads. And so I just implore you to continue to look at the side of all sides, but to think about what's already been done.
Thank you, Ms. Albright. Yes, please.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Redwine from 10 Cobain Terrace, and I lived on Overlook right near Ludington for 14 years, so we have a lot of friends in the neighborhood, and my kids are always biking over there, and when they get older, it's scary in a different way because they're biking on the streets. So again, I'm not a civil engineer, but I just want to piggyback on what Allison said about nothing being more important than the safety of our citizens, especially our youngest citizens. So to me, something needs to be done about Ludington Road. We have kids who bike all around there, and they're safe. They're safe bikers. I've seen them, and I know. I love this neighborhood because I'll get texts like, "I saw your son. He didn't look both ways on the corner," which I really appreciate. So if anybody wants to send me that text ever, please do. I've gotten that text a couple times, yeah. But the point of my story, roundabout, is something as someone who has biked, walked, driven countless times on Ludington Road, my heart's always in my throat when I know my kids are going to be on that road because the current situation is not safe. So yeah, a one-way road sounded like a great solution. I mean, sidewalks sound great too. I teach English. This is not my purview. I don't know. But I was really excited when I heard about the one-way road because I thought that would be a great way. I also bike from Seton Hall, and I usually am walking my bike up that road because I can't bike it up that road. But there are some really narrow parts that are really frightening. So I think the way it is now is definitely a danger, especially to our youngest citizens. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, please, come up. And then there's somebody else over here who wanted to speak next. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? Please raise your hand. Up. I apologize. I selected you a long time ago because you're now on the list. Okay. I'm sorry. Please go
Hi,
ahead.
Andrea Smith Morgan, 17 Ludington Road. Just to reiterate what I was saying on October 3rd, that initially I was one of those residents who I like the idea of a one-way, but one of the things that I thought about is an opportunity for the residents of Ludington Road to be presented with some other viable options. So for example, I know it was, I'm not sure who said it last time, but we wouldn't be able to have like speed bumps due to the incline, but one of the thoughts that came to me was things like rumble strips or stop signs. Again, not knowing the process, the engineering, the mathematics, the statistics that is involved. But I would love, as a resident of Ludington Road, to be presented with at least 4 or 5 options. And again, in regard to safety, we all have children on the streets, and I welcome, I'm so open. As a teacher myself, I am open to ideas. I love that parachute idea, just welcoming other options, and not just a one-way. Like I said, it did sound like a good idea, but again, to have like 4 or 5 options on the table to be presented to all of us on Ludington Road would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please. And then you.
Hi, Bessie, B-E-S-S-I-E, McNamara, M-C-N-A-M-A-R-A, and I live on 40 Burnett Terrace. So I'm here still in support of I thought was a unanimous vote earlier this month. So I'm kind of unclear as to why we're back here. You know, again, I really think the town's efforts to promote safety and to encourage our neighbors and our citizens to be safe, I think it's still important. I think the town is still doing its job, and I hope it sticks to this decision that they made earlier this month, because doing the opposite or otherwise just seems I don't know, kind of unfair. Like, I thought this was done and tabled. But, and again, like, if there were other options, like, now, if it's, so, I don't know. I know I'm not supposed to ask questions, but it's just, I'm unclear as to, like, if the other party wanted to change it, don't they, as a group, have to go through the same channels as the Ehrlichs or anyone else did? So don't they need to go through their own request for a traffic tracker or get their own request for another civil engineer to conduct their separate studies and then present it to the town again? So that's where I'm a little confused. And yeah, maybe I think sidewalks would be great, but isn't that a whole separate process, like a whole new initiative and a whole new ordinance, right? Anyway, so those are my points, and I guess maybe I should all look this up online or call the office and find out more about it. But so yeah, I just think like it would be a real shame if the town didn't really, you know, continue to promote safety. So that's it.
Thank you. Ms. Ryan. Is there anyone else who would like to speak tonight? Okay, you'll be next, please.
Council President.
Yes.
You want to explain that when they do come and ask questions, that they'll be addressed after?
Right, yes.
That makes
You don't serve them.
Correct.
If I could, before, I hate to keep interrupting you, but if you do want to address questions to the council or to the administration, please feel free to do that, and we will try to respond to them when it's our time to talk. Please go ahead, Ms.
Good evening, Town Council President, Councilwomen, Councilmen. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to come again. You guys invited us.
Can you state your name and address,
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry. Lena Kim Ryan, Lina, Kim, Kim, Ryan, Ryan. And I'm at 536 Melrose Place, corner of Melrose and Ludington.
Thank you.
Just wanted to talk a little bit more about the Ludington approval, the 100% vote. Just wanted to just state that, you know, we have many residents that we didn't even know about who have children and actually more senior citizens on that road. And I just, you know, my mom just turned 65 this year, and you know, she always calls me and says, hey, my TV isn't working, or, you know, I can't get my internet to work. And, you know, anybody who's tried to talk their parents through computer stuff is, you know, that's kind of hard. And she's kind of stopped calling me about that stuff. I said, oh, you must be getting pretty good. And she said, no, there's a kid in my neighborhood, not a kid, he's like a 20-year-old kid, but he, you know, he comes by, and it's usually just like a one-click thing that she couldn't figure out or whatever. And that's great. And, you know, I feel bad that I can't be there for her to do those things for her, but I'm so grateful for somebody in the neighborhood who could kind of pitch in and help out and be a good neighbor. And the reason why we're kind of here for us is because we started speaking to all of our neighbors, and I felt that. You know, I felt like if I can't do that for my mom, I should be able to do that for at least my neighbors, you know, who have kids who, you know, can't do the same thing for them, you know, who aren't close by. I just wanted to, you know, also, we had questions about the process because, yes, some of us did not get the notice originally, and actually the paper that I received was from Allison, and that's what I sent back. But we didn't hear anything about the first hearing. I don't know if that's announced. That would have been an opportunity for us to come to you guys and give you some more information on really what goes on the street. And, you know, I know people had questions, the council members had questions at the time, and it was a little bit confusing because we had different numbers and they kept saying the 10-3. I don't know if that affected your votes, you know, and things like that. So we're just kind of confused on that process. I know you guys had said that it's closed. It's, you know, we were also confused because we received a letter from the mayor's office saying that they're going to repoll. So we're still not sure of what the next steps would be as well. We just wanted to, you know, give you a little bit more information about the people who live directly on Ludington, who are the major stakeholders. And yes, we came in late, but it's also, you know, some people will say, oh yeah, you guys knew. We heard rumblings, but really we didn't know, you know, honestly, because otherwise we would have acted much faster. And yeah, I think all of the residents there, their voice should be heard with a lot more weight. Like, you know, I don't go to someone else's house and tell them, you know, and rearrange their coffee table. You know, I think they should just really be heard because these are real concerns. There are senior citizens, there are families with special needs, you know, the moms who need the support, the ones who deal with things that are much, you know, more than I can even think of, you know, Crystal, I mean, she has 6 kids. And yeah, I think that's it. But thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. You guys look like you want to talk. So please, whoever wants to speak, please come on. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak tonight? I'm sorry, I keep ignoring you, I promise.
Council
Nobody else can speak until you speak, I promise.
Council President and Councilman and Council.
Could you just raise your voice a little bit?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. and Mrs. Evans, 7 Ludington Road. 16 years we've been there. And in the beginning, when I heard about this proposal, I was kind of like for it, and then I kind of recapitulated a little bit. I kind of thought about it. I've been there 16 years, and the statistics that I've acquired, I understand that there have not been any, except maybe 2 accidents on that road since I've been there. Okay, and in reference to the cars coming up and down, speeding, I think cars speed on a one-way street also. I'm sure they do. And in terms of changing it to a one-way street to reduce the volume or the quantity of cars, I think they're only going to push the quantity of cars over to the next street. And they'll get used to doing that as well. So I am really adamantly against changing it to a one-way street at this point.
My name is Lillian Evans, 7 Ludington Road. I'm for keeping the Ludington Road as a 2-way because, as my husband said, since living there, the families that we know that have children, they usually play in the backyard. We don't usually see the children on the front lawn or with their bikes right on Ludington. But the main point that I would want to make is that if it's a Ludington Road issue, I believe that the residents, the homeowners of Ludington Road should have the say-so as to whether it should be a one-way or remain a 2-way. There's surrounding blocks, but again, we're talking about Ludington Road. We're not speaking about the other roads being changed, the side blocks. So I think that for the majority on Ludington Road, I think that we should definitely take a look at that. What is the Ludington Road residents looking for? Because up until now, we haven't had any major issues there with it being a two-way, and anyone that's living on the bottom of Ludington, that means that every time you need to go to your local places, whether it's the drugstore or other stores in that area, or to go to South Orange, then that means that we would have to always go up the hill just to come back down the hill. And then too, during the winter months, especially for seniors, you know, it's kind of good to be able to come right out onto, you know, the bottom of the hill, especially if you're towards the bottom of the hill. But I think that the Ludington Road homeowners should have the say-so as to whether it should be changed or not, along with the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, and I apologize for my rudeness. I'm sorry. Is there anyone else who would like to speak tonight? Please raise your hand. Be recognized. I'll ask again, but later. Please.
Hi, my name is Kate Pfeiffer. I live at 22 Ludington Road.
Can you spell your last name?
P-F-E-I-F-E-R.
Thank you.
I mean, I think there's been a lot of valuable points being made. I think in terms of, you know, I implore the council to prioritize the safety of residents over convenience of other residents. And, you know, the analogy I come up with is, because this is something that comes up on Facebook groups all the time, about how with school buses, how there's the stop sign that comes out and how some people obey it and some people don't. And it's it's a law. It's not about whether it works for everybody to have to stop repeatedly when you get stuck behind a bus. We do that because it's the safety of children matters more than your convenience about your commute to work and how long it might take you and how many stops you might have to sit through. And I think that I think the point of this from the beginning was just about making the road as safe as possible. And I truly didn't hear in that initial meeting on October 3rd, many people disagreeing that Ludington Road didn't feel safe to residents, that some people believe it's more speeding, some people believe it's the narrowness, some people believe it's the volume, but nobody was saying this feels like a perfectly reasonably safe street. And I think we just need to do what we can do to make it safe. And I liked what Betsy said about how change is hard, because I think it will take some getting used to. I'm on the bottom part of Ludington as well, so I understand, you know, that it will take some getting used to. And I've actually been practicing it since that meeting on October 3rd in anticipation that it was happening. I was kind of remapping what would be my routes, and, you know, I could see that I will get used to it and I will make it work. And, you know, I questioned some of the things that went on the block with the secondary thing. It was very strategic. People were very strategically approached. It really wasn't an opportunity for everyone to share ideas and thoughts and feelings. It really felt like it. And I confronted Mr. Ryan on this and said, you know, he purposely didn't approach me. I saw him several times on his route, and I stood there in my front yard, you know, with my kids and the dog, waiting for him to come over to my house, and he didn't, and I didn't know why. So there was Facebook references made earlier, so I know you were aware because you guys put out a Facebook post saying it's going to affect the Jitney route. All commuters, please respond. So, you know, I did question how much is it about safety and how much was it about the Jitney? And I know that other things have come up now, but I still think at its core it's safety versus convenience. And at the end of the day, you know, I'll give up my convenience any day of the week for the safety of a single child. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. I see a hand up in the back. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Please raise your hand to be recognized. Anyone else who'd like to speak? Please raise your hand.
Claire Silvestri, 20 Grandview Avenue. I hadn't planned on speaking this evening, but after listening to all of the residents here, I feel for them, and I see that this is an issue that there's a lot of strong points on either side. I just have to ask the administration a question about the policy of how these kind of changes are handled. I know that when we first moved into our house in our neighborhood in Upper Gregory, I believe it's 14 years ago, there were issues on a side street adjacent to ours that people had the same issues about speeding and children, and I know that it was a previous administration, but they had community meetings and everyone was invited. the people on the street itself and the people in the streets associated. And there was talk of making it one way, there was talk of making it speed bumps, but everybody got together. And I see what's going on here. I'm so impressed with the way the different residents have spoken about it, and they've given it a lot of careful thought. And it's disheartening to see how this has all come out, because everybody has the same best interest in the community and for the greater good. And I think that had the administration offered an opportunity for people to all come together and discuss this at the beginning, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I'd like to just ask the administration, do we have obviously we don't because of the way it's been handled, but can we have a policy? Can we go back? I'm sure Councilwoman McCartney has been on the council when the street that I'm talking about, you probably know which one I'm talking about, was discussed. And I know that there is a street adjacent to that street that we having the same issues. And different people have different perspectives. But if everyone can come together, then I think that we can come up with a solution that at least will address everyone's issue and that people can come and agree to. So I'd ask, I know that this is far down in the process, and it's really, I was not at the last council meeting. It's really unfortunate to sit here and listen to this, because I think there can be a way for this to be resolved to the mutual. Not everyone will be perfect in it, but I think we can. The people here are really committed to this issue. And I think that if there is a community, not just taking surveys of people individually, but bringing them together and letting them discuss and talking to each other and talking things out, that there's a good chance that a positive solution can come to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in public comment? Please raise your hand to be recognized. I'm not seeing any hands. There's still a few people here in the audience who haven't spoken, not including the videographer. Okay. Seeing no hands, I'm going to close public comment. And like I should have done right before we started public comment, I should have deferred to Mr. Sayers, because it's really the administration that has the ball in the court since the council has passed the ordinance. If you'd like to bring Mr. Lepore up to speak now, or if you'd like to speak a little bit about the process, the policy and the process.
All I would like to say is what I said in the beginning of the meeting. We did what we were supposed to do, we believe, and we put the ordinance before the council. The council voted 5-0 to approve that ordinance. We're going to support that, but we are also going to walk the neighborhood and speak to the people who live on Ludington Road over the next couple of weeks. But we are in support of what you guys did, and we're not going to change that at this point.
I'd like to ask my colleagues, do you think now is a good time for Mr. Lepore to come up and...
Yeah, I think so.
Is that okay?
I mean, I don't know what else he's going to be able to say other than what I said. He sent you all the information that we got. You asked for that. We sent all the information. We sent you the polling that we did. I don't know what else he can say. If you want to talk to him, I'm fine with that.
Well, I think it would be good for him to let the public know of, he did try other alternatives and, his process for coming to the one-way conclusion. So I think...
What alternatives?
Council President, from a point of order, the Township Council, from a point of order, the entire Township Council voted 5-0 to implement this ordinance, okay? The residents had an opportunity at meeting 1 to voice, to hear and come and everything else, and to reach out to the council as they have been doing via emails. They also had an opportunity, like 20+ residents came at our last council meeting to voice their pros and cons about the project. Based upon that, based upon the information that we had, this Township Council made a unanimous vote to approve the ordinance to create the one-way direction for Ludington Road. And that, as a point of order, Council President, is that the decision has already been made by the entire Township Council. We need to move forward on this, Council President. That's my opinion.
Well, I think as Mr. Sayers had said, is that he, at this point, he doesn't plan a change. It's just a little bit confusing to me, and perhaps confusing to some of the residents and some of the people here tonight. If the decision has been made, as you said, and that's what I thought after the last council meeting, is that the ordinance was approved, and then I'm a little confused if we're now going back and surveying the residents. The only thing I can think of, we certainly are doing that and spending, you know, resources of the town to survey the residents if we don't care what they're going to say. And I would think we're surveying the residents to find out if there does need to be a change. I don't know. But why else would we be surveying the residents?
We have surveyed the residents, and our survey came across that the residents wanted to change. There was another individual who has surveyed residents on their own, other people who have surveyed residents on their own, which is different than what we did. We've gotten a few phone calls after the approvals of people who are in favor of keeping this and people who are not in favor of keeping this. So based on that, the mayor had made a decision last week that he wanted to go door to door to the people on Ludington Road who live on Ludington Road. Because if you look at all these surveys and these different surveys, as one person said, some people don't live on Ludington Road. So the bottom line is we're going to go door to door on Ludington Road and speak to the residents there. However, there's been an administrative action taken by law that was given to the council where a legislative action was taken by law and has been approved. We are not going to interfere in that. We would just like to go and talk to the people. We're not looking to poll anybody. We want to talk to the people on Ludington Road and see what they're...
Okay. I disagree.
Council President, if I may add a couple of things. Legislation in municipalities is done by ordinance. As all of you know, because you act on them at almost every meeting. We went through this process over a month or a little bit more than a month in September into October. There was an opportunity for everybody to be heard. I've been here for almost 20 years, been in West Orange far longer than that, but I've been doing this job for almost 20 years. And frankly, it was one of the more impressive public hearings on an ordinance that I've seen. Maybe the most impressive in all that time. The residents in this neighborhood were extremely able to communicate. I think they all got their points across. They were civil. They did it in an organized and a thorough fashion. The council voted following the process that exists for all legislation that passes, and it's done. Now, there have been a flurry of emails following that over the past few weeks, a couple of weeks, and some people are seeking, obviously, to change. My understanding had been that Mr. Lepore had spoken to the neighbors before all of this took place and did some sort of survey or surveys, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong. So I think that we did try to get a sense of what the neighbors wanted to do in this area. But at the end of the day, it's not necessarily a majority vote wins, because this is a safety issue predominantly. Certainly there may be alternative ways of addressing the safety issue, but my understanding was from speaking with Mr. Lepore that this is the way that he thought was the best way to do it. It was consistent with his survey of the neighborhood, and so you folks voted on it, and now it's the law in West Orange, although obviously it hasn't taken effect yet because it takes time to implement things like this. So some people now want to change, and basically we've had a redo of the first public hearing today, even though there's nothing on the agenda with respect to this. Nobody's taken a vote at all tonight.
Please, we cannot have this dialogue. Mr. Ryan, please. Mr. Ryan, we cannot have people speaking from the audience, okay? Please go ahead, Mr. Kaiser.
Mr. Ryan was here at the last public hearing and spoke, as did many others, both for and against what the council action was. I assume that Mr. Lepore is going to speak, certainly if he wants to, and I think the council wants to hear from him as to what he feels about all of this. But again, at the end of the day, it's predominantly a safety issue. It's not necessarily, controlling as to how many residents want it one way and how many want it another. We have a representative form of government in the United States. That's true at every level. You folks are the elected representatives, and you're in charge of making these decisions, not individual streets or neighborhoods. Although obviously the input of those people is important, and you all consider them all the time. So I think I've said enough, and perhaps Mr. Lepore, if he wants to, could speak.
Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. I think maybe at this point, why don't we just bring Mr. Lepore up? Everybody's wondering.
Yeah, I like to hear.
Everybody wants to hear from him. Yes.
I have a question, Council President. With the street direction now going up the hill, right, after the change, what kind of, and maybe Mr. Lepore can address this, and Mr. Edmonds made this point clear, like how are we to assure that speeding doesn't take place going up the hill? So maybe he can touch upon that issue and that question. Thank you.
You can't. The answer is you can't.
Right, you
can't.
You have a radar.
On any street.
You have to get a radar.
And speeding was not the issue we were...
It wasn't.
Wow.
Mr. Lepore, you've sat here and heard all of the questions. There seems to be, I think, some good questions about the policy and the process. So maybe as part of your remarks, maybe you could just sort of talk about the policy of the township, and particularly when it comes to considering the votes of or the wishes of individual folks on a particular street, as in this instance.
Well, the residents here were surveyed, and the responses that we got, which were a little over half, were 75% said change it to a one-way street. 3 said to keep it as a two-way street. And based on that response, the administration prepared the ordinance, submitted it to this body as our recommendation to change the traffic flow on Ludington Road from South Valley Road to Gregory Avenue to make it a one-way street westbound between those two streets. Certainly, just because somebody says yes, it doesn't necessarily mean they feel that way a few months later. I know particularly that the Morgans at 17 Ludington Road, as well as the Evans at 7 Ludington Road, did respond in the affirmative to change it. And certainly that's why we have this process. I think the clerk, Karen Carnevale, can tell you that our only obligation on an ordinance is to advertise it in the newspaper. Certainly this town, this body, the administration goes past that to make sure that there's initial involvement in the process and that people know the steps that would be taken to effectuate this regulation. Letters were sent out to all the residents in September, letting them know about what the next step in the process was. It's a two-part process. There'd be an initial hearing and a final hearing on October 3rd. So based on the responses of the residents, that's how this ordinance was prepared and submitted to this body for action.
Any questions
Yeah,
from the
I have one.
Councilwoman? You've been very patient.
At our last meeting, what was presented to us and the supporting documentation that we did get from the police department, it wasn't about speed, it was about the inordinate number of cars on that road. And there were also in the report that was presented, other options were considered. That came up this evening about stop signs and rubble things, and that, my understanding is that that does not work on the slope of that street. Can you address those other options that could have been
well, again,
considered?
going back to the speeding issue, this town has dealt with speeding on many streets. Forget what the road grade is. There are certain traffic calming devices that can be used to address speeding. Didn't necessarily see speeding as an issue here that had to be addressed. I think if we were unfortunately to go around to all our streets in town, while I'm not saying everybody speeds, but you're going to find people that are exceeding the speed limit. Most of our streets are 25 miles per hour. I'm sure you're going to find speeding issues on many of our streets. Not necessarily the majority, but you're going to find some outliers that are speeding. There is concern about the volume on the street being somewhat higher than what we would expect on a street like that. But I think what you also have to do is look at, that we have many streets that connect the Valley and the Gregory section. This is one of them, Lawrence Avenue. Could even say Ridgeview Avenue off of Overlook. Lawrence Avenue, Walker Road, Orange Heights Avenue, Forest Hill Road, Wellington, Mitchell. That's what those roads do. They connect the Valley and the Gregory. This one is a little different for a couple reasons. One, there is another section of Ludington Road, which is opposite or on the uphill side or west of Gregory Avenue, which is a one-way street. What happens at the other end of that one-way street, which is where Lowell Avenue and Mountain Way come together, is, in fact, we have a resident here who's from 40 Burnett Terrace. It's not uncommon for motorists on Walker Road to wind their way off of Walker Road using Burnett Terrace, Sylvan Place, Mountain Way. They get to Ludington Road. They can't go down Ludington Road. They will go just one more block and down Lowell Place, go down to Gregory Avenue, make a right on Gregory, get to Ludington Road, and resume their trip down the hill. So that's one of the differences here. The second difference is, unlike all the other streets that I mentioned that connect the Valley with the Gregory section, is this road's only 20 feet wide. And I've worked for the town for many years. I've always scratched my head, although I shouldn't be scratching my head because I'm in a position to possibly do something about it, is why is this one section of Ludington Road one way where it's 20 feet wide, from Gregory Avenue up to Lowell Avenue and Mountain Way, and this section downhill isn't. So while there may have been some thoughts of turn prohibitions, we've used turn prohibitions around schools where we want to prohibit certain movements. We've also used turn prohibitions around many county roads that are signalized where traffic finds a local route around that traffic signal. I didn't think turn prohibitions here, for example, were appropriate because it's no different than Lawrence Avenue or Walker Road, and if we could do turn prohibitions here, I think somebody would say, well, why can't you do them at Lawrence, Walker, and many of the other streets? So what was mostly a concern here for me was the road was narrow. At the top of the street, you had some sharper curves. In the winter, when there's snow, the road gets narrower. We're entering into the leaf collection season. Road gets narrower as people put leaves on the street. The one-way flow seemed to address the issue, and it does take some of the volume off the street. And yet, when you do take volume off a street, it's going to go somewhere else. I would expect this volume to go down Lawrence, but Lawrence Avenue is much wider. Right. And so that's why we got to the proposal for a one-way street.
That's my understanding. No, thank you.
You have the floor. You're done?
No, I am.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak with Mr. Laborde, address questions? Councilwoman?
So can you explain, I know one of the alternatives was, a stop sign, and you said that wouldn't have worked either.
Well, stop signs are meant to stop traffic when it needs to be stopped. If there's a very light traffic street and people approach that and don't feel that there is a need to stop, people tend to start to roll through the stops. There are criteria with volume for making these stops. For example, they are stop intersections already. They're just not always stop intersections. There's stop signs on Ludington in Melrose, on Overlook Avenue and Melrose Place at Ludington Road.
Please, Mr. Ryan, please, please.
Okay, Overlook Avenue. Okay. And I'd have to, so there's a stop sign there. Probably should be one on Melrose, if there's one on Overlook. And but there are criteria for making four-way or all-way stops that this just isn't going to meet. And then if you start to overpopulate your roadway network with multi-way stops, they just become ineffective when the motorist perceives that they don't think they need to stop, regardless if that's the regulation.
And is it possible you could reroute the jitney at all to get a little bit closer?
I think the jitney could be rerouted. It may involve making a loop through South Orange, but it could be rerouted to proceed across or from Melrose Place across to Overlook Avenue. It would then have to go down another street, but it would still end up on South Valley by the base of Ludington, where we have another stop.
I just want to, were you at the mayor's meeting in the Gregory section around this time last month?
No, I was not.
I know he had a meeting, because I had even asked him if any folks had come in regards to this issue. And I know it was a general meeting, but there was a community meeting in Gregory at that same time. So, that's all the questions I have. Thank you, Mr. LaFleur.
Just to follow up on that, I was at most of that meeting, and I don't recall that question came up. I may have missed. I missed the first few minutes.
Yeah,
but
nobody asked.
Yes. So, any other questions? We had a question about the policy, and there seems to me that this situation may be an illustration of a conflict between two primary goals of what appears to be our process. One is we survey the people, the actual residents who might be affected by a certain decision. And then on the other hand, you're the authority, you're the expert who can determine what's the best way to address safety. So you have a potential difference if you think things should go one way to be safe, but perhaps and I'm just throwing this out, I'm not talking about this specific case, if a majority of the residents don't want to go in that direction. So what do you do when there seems to be that conflict with our policy?
Well, you see if there's alternate solutions. But I think overriding, if safety is paramount, and we're not saying this road is unsafe as a two-way street, but certainly I believe and I recommend that it will be safer as a one-way street. I think those are some of the things that may take a higher standard than just to a neighborhood desires. But here, the initial response was, it's not overwhelming, but significantly say, do it. I'll admit, I was surprised a few of the residents near the bottom of the hill said yes, because my thought would be, boy, that's a bit of an inconvenience that they're not going to share now, or they don't have to put up with now.
Council President, I just would like to add, to clear something
Please
up.
go ahead then.
I mean, this is no different than any other legislation in the sense that you can undo it as easily as you did it. If it doesn't work for some reason, or if there are other alternatives that may be added or subtracted or whatever, you can do that just like you do any other ordinance. So it's not like this is written in stone and can't be undone or changed or whatever. And that's something that Mr. Lepore has certainly had the experience with in many other instances in this town over the course of the years. Populations change in different areas, traffic flow changes, and so forth. So.
Right. I want to just echo a lot of the comments that were made, that nobody seems to think that there shouldn't be improvements to the safety of this street, if at all possible. And I agree with that. As I said at the last council meeting, I think it's a dangerous street. I think there's a substantial volume issue and there's a substantial speed issue for a street of that narrowness. And I'm just not sure if you turned it into a one-way street, if everybody knows that there's no cars coming from the other direction, whether that's going to encourage speeding. So, but my main point is that I think everybody's agreed that the street needs to be made safer. It's just that they seem to think that making it a one-way street the whole way isn't the right answer. So I'm not sure I got the answer to my question, which is what happens when you have the conflict between whether the majority of residents want a certain thing, but you think in terms of safety that it needs to have that thing.
Well, then I would point out to the administration and to you as a legislative body that here are my concerns with safety, and this is what I think should be done. I think we would have a very difficult time making this street wider. I think I can almost say with unanimity we probably would have, or probably unanimously have more objections to making the street wider than we would to have it making it a one-way. You'd be really affecting many people's front yards. There'd be walls required in many yards.
We're probably 80 or 90 years too late on that.
Yeah, and
We can still do it.
so yes, as Councilman Cirillo says, it can be done, but I think there would be much more resistance against that, and that's why I said it came back to a one-way street. There are benefits to the one-way street. And I'm not saying the residents don't recognize some of the benefits, but I think they also recognize what the impact is to them as far as their daily travels.
Yes. I just wanted to ask sort of a follow-up question because it seems to me there was some discussion about the stop signs on the westernmost cross street on this portion of Ludington. There's also an eastern I guess access street on Franklin Terrace.
Correct.
And it would seem to me that potentially if you made, say for example, the lower part of Ludington or the upper part of Ludington one-way but left it two-way perhaps below Franklin, whether that would satisfy a lot of the people who want increased safety. If you broke up that street like that, you would certainly have to slow down people.
Well, as Business Administrator Jack Sayer says, the mayor and his staff are going to go re-poll the residents. I'm not going to say that that's not a possibility, but our initial recommendation was to make the whole street one-way, similar to the upper block. There'd be opportunities in the upper block to eliminate some of the or to make it a little bit easier for some of the residents to use if only a portion of it was, but that wasn't the situation there. But like I said, and Jack Sayer said, we're going to poll the residents and discuss their decision with them.
And in terms of, we're already discussed where the previous attempts to get survey responses fell fairly short of getting a unanimous coverage. When you guys go out and knock on doors, are you going to not stop until you talk to every?
We're going to solicit everybody's response.
Go back to them 2 or 3 times if they work and not there?
If that's what's needed,
okay.
Yes. It's only 21.
It's only 21.
21 residents.
Okay. Yes, Councilwoman.
If you're done.
Yes, I think I'm done.
So I know a few residents had mentioned, years ago with kids on the street, when their kids were growing up, that, the street was okay. And I had experience last night where I was in Maplewood and my GPS took me through a street called Hickory, which I thought I was going through somebody's driveway to get to Maplewood Center, to take a shortcut. So I think what really happened here through the years, obviously, not only do people just figure out it was a shortcut, but the GPSs sent folks there to figure it out. So, we've discussed it before with that bottom two-way, if that is a possibility, because you wouldn't get the top, the top would still remain off of Gregory, a one-way, so people couldn't go down it. And then I assume whenever you make these changes, how do they get rerouted into the GPS systems? Like, how does that occur? No, 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 no,
That's
no.
nothing we Google. That's
No,
nothing we
no,
do.
I would assume that because we,
There's absolutely
It's a
no
legit
community.
question, but we have nothing to
Okay,
do with
okay,
it.
okay, one at a
Okay.
time, one at a
I'm not saying it's not
time.
a legitimate
Councilwoman
question.
has the floor, just one at a
well, I
time.
have a legitimate
Please.
question, and the question is, you know, we make a change on the street.
Correct.
We can't go down it anymore.
Correct.
Is it still gonna appear on people's street? Like, it has to, like, how do they
Probably.
pick up the technology? From our ordinances, or?
They usually, my understanding of how it works is they hire people to drive streets. And,
Okay.
you know, so they, and to the extent that they have pre-existing streets, number one, they'll see a change in the, because they're also monitoring, for the case of Waze, that nobody's going down that street. My sense is they probably have some type of.
But there's
of
nowhere we could
formulaic-
report
No,
it.
there's no communication with any of those agencies, or they don't communicate with us.
We've had that question before from other things.
But they figure it out, because they see the traffic now going one way.
Yeah.
Because remember, they're monitoring both ways.
Well, because you have somebody from out of town, and, you know, they're looking at their GPS and not looking up at the stop sign, they're gonna make that quick right turn to go down Gregory if they're coming
It's gonna
from
have to,
South
yeah,
Orange.
that definitely need to be well
And
signed.
there'll be a sign. And there'll be signs, but I wanted to go back. Ma'am,
Let me just,
I'm sorry.
yes, you still got the floor.
And just the last point too, because I know, you know, Jason, we had spoken the day after, and a few others in the audience. And I know I had a terrible time making that decision last week, because you weren't here, Mr. Lepore, but I also know for him to put something up to us, he does his due diligence. And even though I couldn't speak with him, Mr. Gross, I tortured you. Oh, sorry. And it's hard in this seat because I always have to turn. I can't look directly straight out like the rest of you all can. So my voice travels all over the place. But the next day I went back, because I do live on the other side of town. I went over and I drove down Ludington, and from memory, I couldn't believe how narrow it was, and I almost got sideswiped. And this was in the middle of the day. Somebody was flying up the hill. I was coming down the hill, and I really felt a lot better about my decision. So a lot of it is about safety. Unfortunately, times have changed where this technology is just, you know, driving traffic through all our, you know, quiet streets, and everybody wants to get somewhere faster than where they want to go. But, you know, if there's any other alternatives that you could come up with, and you know, that's, again, the process is, the administration would bring that back to us. I can't sit here, I'm not a traffic engineer. You know, I go on the recommendation from our professional, and also, I mean, at the end of the day, folks, you have the street's 20 feet wide. It's very, very narrow. And I'm surprised the folks in Maplewood don't go to their council meeting to make it a one-way on that street, because that was even narrower than your street. That was a tough one. So, but thank you, everybody. You know, I'll wrap up my comments on this issue for coming out tonight. And you've been very, very thoughtful. I had facilitated the Gregory driveway meetings, and I wish they were like you folks were tonight. They were tough. It was neighbor against neighbor. And a year later, you know, everything worked out. So hopefully things will work out here. And as Mr. Kaiser had said, you know, ordinances can be amended. They aren't set in stone, but, you know, we have to put safety first and go by the recommendation of our professionals. Thank you, Council President.
Councilwoman, you've been very patient, again.
No, just to where Michelle talked about the Google Maps, I was just on Prospect Avenue yesterday afternoon, and there was a small car with traveling for Google Maps. So they've been all around town, and they do update periodically. They were not speeding. We were not speeding. But I did want to trail them, though, and find out where they were going. But, and also about Google Maps, I mean, the driver's going to see the signs. There will be signs.
Okay.
Right. There'll be signs on Ludington informing the drivers where to go.
Mr. Lepore, I forgot to ask you this question. One of the speakers at public comment, I thought, made a pretty good point, which was that it appears that there was not a community meeting for this initiative, and I'm familiar where a lot of other times we do have community meetings. Was there a particular reason why?
I think it was the responses to the survey Again, even on sections of the roadway where I would have maybe thought there would have been a contrary opinion to changing it, that we went forward because it seemed like that's how the neighborhood wanted to proceed.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on this? Mr. Sayers, do we have a written policy about how we address these particular issues? Remember, I was talking about the potential conflict between maybe safety and what the residents want. Because I know there's been like a couple of meetings in our neighborhood, and we can't get a majority of people that want to do any one particular thing.
No,
So
no, there's no specific policy. Sometimes people in the neighborhood call and want to have a meeting. Other times we do polling. And as Lenny said, we did the polling. The polling came back, you know, it was actually not 10-3, it was 9-3, because there were two people who lived in the same house, so we only count them as households. So it was, once we got that, we came in and we did exactly what we were supposed to do. We had our first hearing. No one showed up at the first hearing. Then you had your second hearing. Unfortunately, I wasn't here last week because I was at another meeting with the mayor. So I don't know what happened last week, but that's, you know, we went by the information that we got from the public. And that's what we did.
okay. Yes, October 3rd was a very informative meeting.
Yeah.
Sorry you weren't here.
Sorry I missed that. But I was at another meeting with the mayor.
The fourth community meeting,
The fourth community meeting I was at, that's correct.
So do we have any other comments or
Yes,
please?
I have a question. When, you know Benvenue Avenue?
Yes.
Coming onto Benvenue heading eastbound, right? We switched that, right? You can't make a left anymore, right? Into Northfield
All the way
Avenue,
at Northfield Avenue.
right?
Actually,
And then if you're coming up Northfield, you can't make a right anymore, right? We switched that. I don't remember having a town hearing or a community hearing. It's a safety issue.
it was some, again, this is, you know, different from what we're talking about now, but
Yes,
there were some
very
people in that neighborhood who asked for some changes. It's a relatively small group of people, did similar work, polled them, you know, got suggestions, recommendations, if any feedback came, and we made
I have
changes.
7 more minutes on the road for me, but hey, it is what it is. It's safety. It's dangerous coming down Benvenue or making a right from Northfield Avenue. So I accept it. It's a safety issue. It's a safety concern.
You know, I just want to say one thing and I'm done. But I always tell this story about, we had a neighborhood meeting, and I won't say where or what section of town it was in, where people were complaining about speeding, cut-throughs on their streets. And we set up the police for 1 week, and we did enforcement, and we issued 11 summonses. 9 of the summonses were issued to the people who lived on the street. And after we issued those, after we showed them the results, they didn't want us to do anything. Because the people who were cutting through the street and speeding on the street were actually people who lived there. So it doesn't, the point I'm trying to make is, try to do the best you can do and get the best information you can get. And in this case, we felt we had good information based on the responses to our surveys, and that's why we moved ahead with what we moved ahead with.
So maybe once you complete the survey that you're anticipating to do, you could come back to the council and we could discuss it.
I don't believe we're going to change it, to be quite honest with you, but the mayor just wanted to, he made a commitment to some of the people who called him to walk the street and talk to the residents on Ludington Road, because he did get some calls from people who were in favor of it and were adamant about being in favor of it, and people who were not in favor of it.
Right.
So he wants to walk the street and talk to the residents on Ludington Road. And we're going to probably start doing that next week.
Okay, and I applaud that. But I'm just thinking, if you come back from the street and 75% of the people you talk to say we don't want it one way, then, you know, as several people have pointed out, we as the legislative body could change the ordinance. So I think it would be important to know what the results of your survey is. So would you be opposed to coming to the?
It's his decision, obviously, but I don't see a problem with that at all.
Well, let me just put in, unless my fellow council members are opposed, I think we should just ask, you know, just lay it out there that we would like to get a report back on the survey results once they're completed.
Can I make a statement? 'Cause
Please.
I don't want to mislead the public, so I would like to get that information back because it's good information to see what the feedback was, but unless Mr. Lepore is not, and I'm not saying this just to throw it on them because I'm a big girl, I could change my own mind, but I'm not a a civil engineer. He is. So unless he makes the recommendation, I don't see where the council, where we would make a recommendation to amend it without his input. I just want to clarify that on my end. So unless Mr. Lepore is looking to, he is out there talking and he sees something else out there, maybe from something he heard tonight, or the conversations we've had, about 3 of them since that last meeting. And he, it has to come from the professionals. We're not civil engineers to change an ordinance of that nature. So.
Councilwoman.
Thank you. I think also if you are going back to do the survey, that the facts have to be presented about the jitney and other things that were presented that did not seem accurate. So
You need to understand one thing. We're not going back there to do a survey. We're going back there to speak to the residents and see what their opinion was, or whether their opinion changed. Obviously, as Lenny said, from our first survey, 2 people changed their opinion for whatever reasons. I'm not sure why they did. But,
Please, Mr. Ryan.
can I talk?
Please. No.
You're
Whoa.
very
Whoa.
unprofessional.
We can't.
I didn't know I
Please, wait.
Okay,
Mr. Sayers. Mr. Sayers, don't. Mr. Sayers, please. You shouldn't, please don't address him, okay?
like, all I'm saying is that we're going to clarify.
The meeting in about 5 minutes.
Well,
Just to make sure that when you are speaking to everyone, that the facts are spelled out, that it wasn't presented to us. To me, it was presented about volume, it wasn't about speeding, it was about safety.
It wasn't about speeding.
It was about safety.
It was about safety.
All of those other factors were mentioned about the jitney and inconvenience, and I think just people need to have the facts of what's actually happening.
I will do my best.
Always do.
just,
Okay.
my colleagues, have we drained this subject?
Yeah.
Oh, we drained it.
Everybody's?
Yeah.
Okay. We actually had public comment where people talked about other things. I don't know if, yes, thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
LeBoer.
much, Lenny.
I don't know if anybody else has any other, Councilman Cirillo, please.
Thank you, Council President. My question was, there was a speaker that brought up the issue of the land use master plan. How often does that need to be re-examined or revisited?
10 years?
We have actually, I thought we voted on redoing that.
Yeah.
Didn't the planning?
The planning board passed a resolution asking the township to allocate funds for that. I mean, I think it's a 6-year interval.
I know I know the interval is some number of years. I'm just not sure what it is, and I'm not sure if it's by statute or by our ordinance or a combination. But I know that periodically we have to re-examine the master plan, and we always wind up paying for a study, and the planning board reviews it. You folks review it. I'm not sure what the interval is.
Yeah, it wasn't budgeted in this year's budget. We're anticipating including it in next year's budget.
With your permission, Council President,
Please.
I overheard 6 years?
6 years.
When
Right.
when is those 6 years up?
It's now. That's why the letter was sent to the council. We did have it on our agenda, and it was not passed because the funding wasn't there to pay for the planner. So it will be discussed in our next budget hearing. That's what I presented to the planning board, because we do want to move forward with the master plan. So that's...
Through your permission, Council President.
Sure.
So are these issues of safety, like, do you look at streets too? Is
Sure.
that issue considered when you're putting together?
Quite a few elements in...
Complete streets.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well,
All right,
that was
so
added to it.
Okay, so Councilwoman, so you expect that to be considered, look at issues like this, such as Ludington? Is there other areas, perhaps that can be looked at, and later on, our professionals can look at and assess whether or not changes are a necessity?
Well, sure, there are so many elements in the master plan, so each one is reviewed, and it is open. I know that Sally mentioned about being a stakeholder. It is open to the public to come to the meetings, and stakeholders would be invited just as well as residents would be invited. So,
Okay, and lastly, with your permission, Council President, sidewalks has become like an issue of conversation. Is that something that's considered also?
yes, the
is there a
problem with
streetscape?
that,
Yeah.
yes, and it is part of the Complete Streets policy, but we can't condition someone to just put in sidewalks unless they have an application before us. You can't just go to someone and tell them to install sidewalks.
The primary impact of the master plan is on future development,
Okay.
not on a orientation of existing streets.
So that's the premise, Mr. Gross, future development, and then all the elements and what's considered pertains to what we want or what vision we would like with respect to land use,
Yeah.
what vision we want
Right.
to pursue. And so that's where safety may or may not come in and sidewalks?
Yeah, it's probably a little higher level view than what we've been talking about today. I mean, but yes, it definitely is impact.
I see. Now, last question, with your permission, Council President. Essex Green, so how is that incorporated? With that being the premise of the land use master plan, how do you see that being
Okay, so that's going to be discussed on November 1st. We passed a resolution to designate that as an area of needed redevelopment. Now the study will have to be done. So that happens on November 1st.
Okay, so that's already underway, independent of the...
Yeah, that's not,
That's
it
right.
can be dealt with in the master plan environment, but it doesn't have to be in this, we're going to be ahead of that.
But I wanted to add also to your point about the master plan, that we look at an overview of the entire town, and we look at different pockets too of commerce. I know that Sally mentioned that as well, that maybe something can be rezoned. There was, I just remembered 6 years ago, we looked at a lot of office space wasn't a business zone, it was office research. We're not doing office research, so at that time, so they were changed. And we can change those little, St. Cloud, all the little pockets of commerce that we have, we can look at either expanding that or narrowing that zone. So that's all reviewed during the re-exam.
And those are recommendations, but the actual action is to be taken at the planning board?
Yes, and then it comes to the council for approval.
Right, but
To
as it
rezone.
relates to formulating the new land use plan, it's only recommendations
Yes.
to be considered? Okay.
Well, recommendations are made, and then they have to be presented to
Yeah.
the council.
Yeah, thank you for the education, I appreciate it, and thank you for your knowledge, for sharing that knowledge. Thank you, Councilman.
Yeah, it's an attempt to have the master plan evolve with the times and evolve with the changes in the times. So it's really a survey of what's gone on in recent years and what we'd like to go on in the next future years. And I had just asked for a discussion of this because I don't have the letter in front of me, but I think the planning board resolution was back in, was it August?
A couple months ago, right.
And I just wanted to make sure, since it's the council that has, the budget responsibility, that we have a chance to talk about whether we want to get this process started sooner or later. Because I remember this has been mentioned at planning board meetings since early this year, and there are people in town who would like to get this process started sooner rather than later. I just thought with a $78 million budget and we're frequently spending money on new projects, that maybe we as a council might think it's important to get this started sooner rather than later.
That's certainly council's prerogative, but the only way you could do it this year is with an emergency appropriation.
Right,
You'd
and we
have to
chose
pass
not
an
to do that,
emergency
right.
appropriation.
And we've got...
And we chose not to do
we've
that.
got a $3.2 million emergency appropriation on the agenda today.
Right, so it's really just a couple of months away anyway, and here's the resolution, and it was signed August 3rd, 2017. And this is to conduct the periodic re-exam of the master plan.
Planning board?
This was a planning board recommendation to the council.
Yes, we did
Right, we
that.
did approve it, but there is a fee in here of $35,000 to secure a professional planner. That was not appropriated in this year's budget, so that's why we're waiting for 2018 to begin this study.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Councilwoman.
Yeah, Councilwoman, I just have a question for you. So, but don't you have to prep before you start the study? Like, are you going to start the stakeholder meetings, like, sooner than that time frame? Or are you going to wait to it's appropriate
You
and then
cannot
start?
engage your professional until the funds are in place.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, unless you're going to do that without your professional being involved.
Okay. So I thought you were able to start even though we have him
I'm sorry.
on the, oh, no, we're not using, wait, are we using Mr. Greigel for that?
That's
Yeah.
that's what was
That
that's
was
the
a-
person
that's
who
what
was
the
discussed to
planning
do
board
this.
discussed,
But
yes.
even though he's attending the other meetings, you still can't start the stakeholder meetings?
It's not within
No,
the
this
scope,
is
it's not
different.
within the
This
scope of
is
this
Go.
contract.
All right.
One thing that the planning board did decide to do differently, in years past, we've always had a subcommittee, and I've always sat on those subcommittees too, and it's a smaller group, and we meet and discuss. This is going to be open public meetings where everyone's involved. So it's not you're reporting back, this is all planning board members are involved, which I like that. It just is for a heartier discussion on topics. And to Victor's point before about different elements are added, because just, again, when we started the Sustainable Jersey Project back in 2017, our last exam was 2010, there wasn't anything in our master plan about those green initiatives. So now that they are in our master plan as a planning board, we can, again, make recommendations to applicants to follow. If you recall, we passed the checklist that if they, right, we're asking them to make recommendations on these green initiatives. If they choose not to make these initiatives, then they have to explain why. So it's, as Joe said, it is evolving and it changes as the municipality changes.
Hold on. Councilwoman still has the floor.
So I kind of like that it is starting later because we'll have the senior citizen report back. And I hope, they'll be able to review that and get the input back from the survey. So I guess that could be
Yeah,
formally
that's
submitted,
part of
or
it.
we could have the health department submit that to you at a stakeholders meeting.
And that'll be interesting to see that, too, because that would be part of the transportation element, if that's what comes out of it, or community center type
Well,
of
we're
thing.
looking
to
at
see
aging
what-
in place, so
Right.
I would think you would bring that into your planning.
Right.
That's all. I'm done. Thank
Does
you.
anybody else?
Yes.
Councilman.
And Councilman, thank you, Councilwoman McCartney, just the idea too of complete streets and safe streets has already been incorporated
Right.
within the whole proposal. So all those considerations, and of course with the engineers that you have on the planning board, they take those scopes and they apply them, and how the impact would be between what you'll get from the senior citizen survey
Sure.
and plus what you get from the complete streets, safe streets. Okay.
It's a constant topic of discussion. It was just a complete street study today, a seminar today.
I don't recall a discussion of funding this during our budget process this year. Did the planning board or the planning department make a request?
No.
Okay. But
Not till August, so.
Okay. So do you have sufficient notice that we want to make this part of the
Well, as I
discussion?
said, we're anticipating.
Okay. So here's a quick question. I think the resolution is worded to say no more than $35,000.
Right.
I'm wondering if the council thinks it might be appropriate, if we want to get the process started, to at least do a minimal funding, like maybe 10,000. That's certainly a little bit easier to swallow than 35,000. And then we can at least get the process underway.
I would ask for the administration.
Yeah,
to see
what would-
their recommendations.
Either way, it's gotta be an emergency appropriation,
Right.
whatever you want.
I don't think it's
And then
necessary.
you'd basically have to decide what you were gonna segment and ask them to do that. That's
We
really.
have to say, this is what we want for the first 10,000.
Right, you'd have to say, this is what you can get for it's like buying gas, give me $10,000. You have to ask them, what could you do for $10,000? And then when you got that done, you'd have to stop.
But we would certainly, I would think, $10,000 to do some of the stakeholder meetings, we would be at January 1st in no time.
All I'm gonna say about that is you're now approaching November and December when there's not a lot of time. Generally speaking, probably not the best times to be doing stakeholder meetings. People are pretty tied up.
Yeah.
You probably want to do them and plan them for January. Now,
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily mean you can't do something. I don't know, in terms of what else
Yeah,
you
I
can do
wouldn't
against
touch
that.
December.
But I think,
Yeah.
I would recommend against doing that because people generally are very busy during this period of time.
And again, it's only a few, thank you, it's only a few months away. I don't think 2 months it's going to make that much of a difference. Again, surveys aren't in, aging in place. And I don't like the idea of doing it in piecemeal. I would rather be more comprehensive and we're following a process than a little bit here and then pick it up there. And I'd rather just follow the process rather than doing it piecemeal.
Your next meeting is November 21st. So you couldn't even do anything until November 21st. And of course, then you're into the holiday, the holiday season.
I'm not going to be here.
I think it's,
I don't want to rush through it either.
Yeah, okay. So I'm trying to recall if there were any other items for discussion. First of all, have we drained this subject as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm trying to come up with the other comments before we close public.
All I recall were those two
Master
items being
plan.
discussed.
That's it.
And team talks from Tammy Williams.
Yeah, that
And the
was it.
library grants.
Yes.
Advocating for the library grants.
And the
yeah.
the Oak Barrel Pub,
Yep.
Thursday night.
October
This Thursday night,
26th.
yes.
Mhm.
15% of proceeds go to Friends of the West Orange Public Library.
All right, let's move on.
And I wanted to thank Sally for publicly acknowledging the Muckers Ball and advocating and supporting the project.
Yes, I just like to say thank you to the residents. I'd just
Yeah.
like to say thank you to the residents who came out tonight, whether pro or con, of the Ludington, thank you. We don't put safety in the background. Safety comes in the foreground. That's what our public, our pedestrian safety advisory board does. That's why we have street engineers. That's why Mr. Lepore is a member of that board. I thank those who came, whether you're pro or against it. The thing about it is you don't put inconvenience ahead of safety, particularly child safety. So, thank you, Council President.
We done?
Oh, I'm done.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you. We're going to go over the consent agenda. Approval of minutes of previous meeting, public meeting of October 3rd, 2017.
Consent.
Consent.
Which we just
Consent.
rehashed.
Report, yeah. Report of township officers, none. Reading of petitions and communications and bids, none. Bills, are there any questions on the bills?
Consent.
Consent.
Resolutions, are any resolutions being pulled this evening?
If I could,
Yeah.
could I just ask the folks that are back here having a very lively and very loud discussion, if you feel a need to it, maybe you can just go outside? We won't be doing anything for the next 5 minutes. I don't want to send you away unless you're a baseball fan. Thank you.
Baseball.
Baseball. Yes, Councilwoman.
226.
You want to pull that?
Yeah.
Are there any other resolutions being pulled?
I don't want to pull anything, but I do want to just ask a couple questions about a couple of the proposed resolutions. Is there anybody else that wants to pull anything?
No, I just have my concerns with 226.
Mr. Gross, just perhaps briefly, Agenda Item C, Resolution 224-17, Resolution authorizing an emergency appropriation. You've already mentioned this early in the meeting, but maybe you could just briefly describe, there's a number of proposed pieces of legislation, both ordinance and resolution. Just to talk a little bit about it, it's a big number, $3.2 million, and maybe you could just explain briefly what's...
Yeah, as council recalls, beginning of the first meeting of the year, and at least one other time, we put before you resolutions to authorize an emergency to fund tax appeals for this year in order to pay them out. And that tonight is a third and final for the year. What this does is it gives us the ability to finance those tax appeals over a 4 or 5 year period, whatever the local finance board approves for us, so that the taxpayers don't take the hit of them, the brunt of them all at once. So, for instance, tonight we're talking about $3.2 million. If we had, the taxpayer had to pay for that in its entirety, that's a tremendous hit. And if we could finance that, so let's say over 4 years, it's about $800,000 a year. And not coincidentally, we have a previous $800,000 emergency that we're paying off paid off this year, so that from a cash flow perspective, this is well designed. We also, additional to that, I think it's important to note that this is the last major tranche of our commercial tax appeals. I'm not saying it's our last tax appeal, commercial tax appeal, but it's certainly the last major tranche. And we feel very confident that moving forward, a couple of things. Number one, we don't expect to be back before you next year with this. Now, we don't know what the year is going to bring, but we certainly don't anticipate that. We are anticipating seeing an uptick in our total assessed valuation for next year, which would be an overall, because we won't be tearing it down with commercial tax appeals. So we have seen over the past few years our increase in our residential property values, but most of that's been eradicated by our commercial appeals. This is really good news as far as I'm concerned. This is we're bringing to hopefully the end the output and the response to the reval that was done some 6 or 7 years ago, and hopefully moving forward now we're still at a very good ratios in the low 90s, so we're really in a good place to move forward.
Do you mean the ratio of market to assessed value?
Yes.
Okay. Well, can we finally hold you to an increase in our tax base? Because it's been going down every year for like 11 years. You can hold me to anything. We absolutely believe it, but I'm not the guy that makes that decision. Okay. But all indicators are, and again, because this year we took steps to mitigate it, and so we're very hopeful, and I feel very positive about it. Because look, we all know the market is flying on the residential side, so we definitely expect to see an incline there, and we are not looking to reduce our next year's tax rateable with any commercial. So early in the year, I think we passed a $2 million emergency appropriation to cover expected tax appeals.
Yeah, we started off at $1 million, then we went to 2, and now we're at 3.2.
Okay, but the 1.2 that we're adding today, or potentially adding today, has to do with potential retirement payouts. Did I understand that correctly?
I'm sorry, maybe I'm talking about the wrong. I was talking about the tax appeals. The 1.2 is a different. That's a different topic. That is.
That's worrying me if you're confused about the numbers.
No,
these are big numbers.
I'm confused about what you were asking.
Oh, okay, okay.
What I was talking about with the tax, the 3.2 is the tax appeals. That's a separate emergency from the 1.2, which is a special emergency to fund payouts for retiring employees. We had about 21, 22 employees this year that we had to pay out for.
Okay. And when you
we do that every year.
Right, and when you say 22 employees, that's people who have notified us that they may retire?
No, those are actuals.
Oh, wow.
Or left, or whatever the case may be.
Okay.
Some of them are payouts from previous years where they deferred it, to our advantage as well as theirs. So but it was a big year.
So it's 3.2 million for successful tax appeals.
Yes.
And because the list you sent me, I thought was like a little over 3 million, almost 3.1 million, the list of the tax appeals, and then there's some expenses.
We have, and there's some expenses in there, and
okay.
Also we have until the end of this month to use up the rest of the money if we get any more appeals in. So. Okay, so we're actually considering $4.4 million altogether between the two
in emergency appropriations that are more than likely going to result in additional borrowing. Okay. And then I wanted to just also ask, there's a agenda item K, resolution 232-17. It's a resolution authorizing the tax collector to reimburse taxes due to an overpayment. And what it sounded like from the resolution is that our property tax consultant that keeps all of our numbers increased somebody's assessment incorrectly. It's not
an assessment, and I don't have all the details on it as of yet. An assessment was made for the beginning of the year. Change in an assessment for the beginning of the year was inaccurate. It was an inaccurate assessment that was made. I don't know what the circumstances are behind it are. I'm looking at that, and if we need to put in some kind of internal controls, we will. It could be just somebody's, just a mistake, or it could have been some circumstances that led us down that road, and at the end you find out that everything wasn't as what you thought it was, so it had to be reversed. I just don't know the answer.
Okay, could you just, when you guys get that figured out, could you just come back and let us know?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. Any other questions?
Just on.
Okay. We'll defer to Madam Clerk on the consent agenda, and then we'll come back to your resolution.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is implemented. Councilwoman Castellino holds Resolution 226-17, a resolution to award a contract to Wilden Energy as the BPU direct install contractor for energy efficient measures for various township facilities in the amount of $65,545.27.
Okay, so Mr. Gross and myself had a nice, long conversation today. Yeah, I'm always happy to see a grant come in from especially New Jersey Clean Energy Program, where we're getting the majority of the cost paid for these improvements. However, I was just a little bit of a stickler today because as I appreciate each building breakdown, I just wanted the information on what each building is receiving. A short summary, not the whole long purchase order, and we had discussed this.
Yeah.
And if you want to
Yeah,
go down each building, I'd ask you for a breakdown of each building. And I think it's always good for the public to know the improvements we're making in our facilities.
As we discussed this afternoon, these are $218,000 worth of improvements, which we've received a grant for all but $65,000, round numbers, $65,000, in order to basically bring lighting upgrades and HVAC improvements to 10 of our buildings. Actually, six out of the 10 will be lighting upgrades and HVAC improvements, and the other 4 are just in lighting upgrades. Those 10 buildings are 5 firehouses, town hall, police station, or police substation, the library, and recreation.
Okay, but are you going to send us a list of who's getting what? That's what I'd asked for today. I thought I was going to have that here tonight.
I sent, first off, I sent it in the email today, a spreadsheet with it. And
I apologize, I didn't see it later today.
I can, all 6 of the 10 buildings are getting both lighting upgrades and HVAC improvements. For the 4 that are not, that are only getting lighting upgrades, would be Firehouse number 1, Firehouse number 3, Firehouse number 4, and the recreation building. And just to give you, I'm either going to send you the whole list of the purchase order, or we're going to talk about it, because most of it are $400 and $500 items or less in the lighting upgrades. To the extent that's anything substantive, they're compressors for the building. That's the HVACs.
Mm-hmm.
So where the 6 out of 10 of our buildings are getting HVAC improvements, which means compressor replacements, and the other, as well as lighting upgrades.
Okay, but so you sent a summary, or what did you send? You sent
I sent basically what I just said. It's either this level of detail, or I'll give you the purchase orders, because they're.
Yeah, I'm fine with a short, with a snippet.
Can I interject here?
Councilwoman, would you defer
May I,
to
please?
the council?
So I can certainly send you this. This is something that the Environmental Commission had a presentation with Wildan over the summer. We've been working on this since July and August. I have all the reports and thanking the purchase department, Paula, and sending all of the electric bills for them to use as an assessment tool. This is a breakdown, what you're asking for. This shows the breakdown from each department, each facility, if what you want to see.
And just so you know, I trust Mr. Gross and all the work, and I appreciate everything that's done, but, when we go talk about budgets, budget season is coming, and we had the discussion last year in regards to highlights. This is a highlight for us. We should really have the information, so when we get to budget season, we could say about what we've done and what we need to do, and we kind of have a wrap around our heads, especially with the firehouses. I know there have been some advocacy on our firefighters for improvements and upgrades there. So we have an idea of what is being done in each of the buildings. Also, the library, I'm glad to see they're on the list. Do you know offhand what that improvement was going to be?
They had both HVAC and electric. Just let me give, and again, I guess maybe I'm not.
And that's it. That's all I need for each one, HVAC and electric. This one. That's all I was looking for. Just little.
As I just went over.
Yeah.
6 out of 10 of the buildings got HVAC and electrical. The 4 that did not, of the 10 buildings listed here, 3 of the firehouses and rec department.
Yeah.
They did not get any of the HV.
Okay.
And just as an example, and I apologize if I haven't been clear, like if you take a look at in terms of the police department, you know, there's probably about 75 switches or light fixtures.
The lighting's great, that's all I need.
Let me finish,
Yeah.
okay? And there are, for the 1 compressor. That's it. That's the scope of this project. It's not, there's nothing beyond compressors and lighting.
I know, but when you want us to approve money and wrap our heads around it, that's all I was asking for, and I just, you know, need the information. You know, if we have another presentation on facilities, no, it's not broken down what we're getting.
It is, on the back of
No,
this
no, the money's
resolution?
broken out, no, what we're actually getting in the
Okay,
buildings.
so that's in this report that I can
You
send you.
had it because you were involved in the project. We're not involved in the project. I had no clue what I was approving. What I will like to make a comment on, which I think is great in the energy savings portion of this, is, you know, the longest that we're going to see energy to get our results back in is 2.43 and 2.17 years, which is great. I mean, most of these are under a year. We'll see
Yeah, our average is
savings
what-
back for what we invested in. So I think that's great. Now, this is great work. This is great for the township. You know, as I said, I call it a highlight. But again, just when we get this kind of information, I just, you know, want it ahead of time. But I appreciate all the work that went into it. I'm done, Council President.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Is there a motion to approve Resolution 226-17?
So moved.
Second.
Councilwoman Castellino?
Yes.
Councilman Cirillo? Councilman Guarino?
Yes.
Councilwoman McCartney? Council President Krokoviac?
Yes. Motion carries. Madam Clerk?
Ordinances on first reading, 2529-17, refunding bond ordinance providing funding for an emergency appropriation for payments of amounts owing to others for tax levied in and by the Township of West Orange, appropriating $3.2 million, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $3.2 million bonds or notes of the township for financing the costs thereof. Is there a motion to introduce on first reading?
Second.
Councilwoman Castellino?
Yes.
Councilman Cirillo?
Yes.
Councilman Guarino?
Yes.
Councilwoman McCartney? Council President Krokoviac?
Yes. Motion carries. Do any of my colleagues want to have a discussion about this? I just have a follow-up question, and that's why I was asking you about the numbers, because you sent over a supplemental debt statement that includes the $3.2 million, which raises our outstanding debt to almost $84 million. But you were saying that the $1.2 million emergency appropriation.
Oh, I
for-
didn't send that one to you. I apologize, too. I'll send that out to you tomorrow. I'm sorry.
So I got one of them, but
Yes, you didn't get the
but
second.
not two of them. Okay. Okay. So it's even more. Okay.
That's my fault. I apologize.
Okay. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Ordinance 2530-17, an ordinance creating a reclassification and salary schedule of certain Township of West Orange employees, setting forth their titles, classification, and salary ranges, and adopting a salary guide and establishing the employee's status as a Township employee under the guidelines of the New Jersey Department of Personnel. Is there a motion to introduce on first reading?
So moved.
Second.
Councilwoman Castellino?
Yes.
Councilman Cirillo?
Yes.
Councilman Guarino?
Yes.
Councilwoman McCartney? Council President Krokoviac?
Yes. Is there anyone who would like to, I'm sorry, the motion carries. Is there anyone who would like to discuss this?
No. Just to make the comment that I appreciate the legislative history on the back, explaining the titles and the changes.
So this proposed ordinance has no fiscal impact?
That's right.
Oh.
We just continue to find little quirks in the ordinances that are not consistent. And so we kind of saved them up instead of spending the money right away, but they're probably in the last 6 months we found this. And I suspect before we're done, we may find a few more.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Ordinance 253117, an ordinance authorizing special emergency appropriation pursuant to NJSA 40A:40 wow, I messed that up. 40-5.3, I'm assuming, for severance liabilities resulting from accrued leave in connection with the layoff or retirement of employees. Is there a motion to introduce on first reading?
So moved.
Second.
Councilwoman Castellino?
Yes.
Councilman Cirillo?
Yes.
Councilman Guarino?
Yes.
Councilwoman McCartney?
Yes.
Council President Krokoviac?
Yes. Motion carries. Does my colleagues want to discuss this at all?
Just have a question now. What do you expect the retirements that we have, being so close to the end of the calendar year?
It's not so much that, well, first off, the retirements come as they occur, and the employees. We have to do this now because we're getting to the current, at the end of the year. Some of these are paid out earlier, but we're going to, in order to replenish our budget, we do it, instead of doing it a couple times a year, we just do it once a year. So we always do it at the October meeting.
Okay, so you're allocating that into the budget as originally
That will go right into the
approved back in
police
March?
budget, right? It'll go into the police budget, or
Thank you.
whatever department's budget it is.
Got it. Thank you, Council President.
And this is just when people retire under state law, they get to take all of their unused vacation. Yes, yes. So this is in addition to whatever actual retirement benefits. Next agenda item is matters pending, new matters. I had a couple, but we've already addressed them. Is anybody else? Councilwoman?
I hate, property maintenance department, are they, Mr. Sayers, where we're at, you were moving somebody else in there, has that occurred yet, or?
What's that? I'm sorry.
In property maintenance, you're
Yes,
moving
we are
somebody
training-
over?
we're gonna move, someone, another property. We had a retirement and we never replaced the
Yeah.
retirement. So we're gonna replace the retirement within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, so then they'll be up to full
It's not gonna be a
staff?
cost because we're
No,
just moving
yeah.
people around.
But they'll be up to fully staffed and, because I know they've been running crazy.
I mean, he's gonna have to be trained, but yes,
Okay.
it's gonna take a little while, but then they will have their third person.
And then, because I know, I had asked her, but I brought this up to you again, they still haven't done anything with that incident from over the beginning of the summer with the asphalt all over on
That's
Main
being
Street?
worked on by legal right now. There's some legal issues there.
Really?
Yes.
We can't, because it looks horrible, yeah.
We're working on it.
Okay,
We are definitely gonna get it done. It's just a matter of how we gotta get it done.
okay. That's it.
Thank you. Just to clarify that, we had a retirement in property maintenance, but I thought he was only a part-timer in
No,
property
he was
maintenance.
full-time.
In property maintenance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, he was full-time.
Okay. Any other matters pending besides what the score of the game is?
What's the score?
I don't know.
Oh, it's still pending.
What?
So baseball score
Nobody's
matters are
listening.
pending.
The World Series?
Okay,
Yeah.
World Series.
First game.
Okay, I think that is the end of our agenda tonight, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Don't we have an ABC? or-
Well,
Yeah,
after we
yeah.
adjourn.
Oh, yeah, that's
Motion to adjourn, though.
Motion moved?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to stay for what I hope is going to be a very, very short ABC hearing.
Yes.
I'm thinking 30 seconds, too.
30 seconds, well, let's go. I make a motion, we reconvene as the ABC board.
Thank you. I was going to ask.
You have a second?
By the way, bottom of the fifth.